Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily, and today's episode is a Christmas mega video. I have 3 hours of Christmas DIYs for you. It is the first mega video of the 2025 Christmas DIY season. So whether or not you're just looking for some fun Christmas inspiration, maybe you've got a Christmas craft show coming up you're trying to get prepared for, or you're just trying to come up with some really fun and beautiful ideas of things to make, hopefully this video gives you all the inspiration that you need. I would love if you would consider subscribing, but let's get right into the DIYs. These are some pretty basic Christmas bells that you can pick up at Hobby Lobby. You can see it's $7.49 for the pack. However, the Christmas is usually 50% off at Hobby Lobby. When I bought these, they were. So you're working with 2 bells here. You could just use one, but you could also buy a bunch of them and have them for ornaments. But the finish on them is hard to translate on camera, but it's very fake gold looking. And I love the really rustic look of this style of bell. So we're going to rustic these up a bit. So I'm taking some baking soda and just some black chalk paint, and I'm just going to mix these together to make kind of a paste. I do mist a little bit of water in there to kind of help give it a little bit more liquid, so that way as you start to mix these together, they'll mix fairly well. And you just want this to be kind of a paste consistency, so when you dab your brush on your bell, you're going to create some texture. Work in some small sections as you're doing this. You can start from the top to the bottom, but you just want to make sure that you're not obviously messing up the texture with your fingers or anything. Do make sure that you get inside your bell, because if this is hanging on your tree or wherever it's hanging from, you will be able to see up into it at least half of the way. I decided to paint the entire inside of mine. So on this one, I started out by holding the bell on my fingers there and working from the top on the way down. That way I was trying to just avoid any mess. Now, if you don't have a bell or you want to try this texture, you could use any of these like plasticky type ornaments from Dollar Tree. You can use really any type of ornament that you could do this on. Now, to get the gold to come through, I'm using some antique gold rub and buff. I love this stuff. It works so good. I started with my finger trying to rub it on here, but I ultimately decided for this size of project, a brush was going to work because I didn't need it to be super thick. You can put it on as heavy or as light as you would like. But this way I could hit all of the raised areas of that texture, and I did kind of swirl the gold around to get it heavier in some areas. But you're just going to do this process all over this top surface of the bell, and then also on the inside, and also the little, I don't even know what that's called. What is the little like thing that dings the bell? I sound so uneducated, but I don't know what that's called. But you're going to do this all over your entire bell. I think these look so cute. That texture is so cute. Of course, you can't hear them ding right here, but they sound really good too. But they just look so farmhouse and vintage country. I just love that texture that this adds to them. Now, one of them I'm going to show you can jazz up just a little bit. So I'm just taking a little bit of ribbon and tying just a little teeny tiny bow. And after I get the rope put back onto the top, then we'll go ahead and kind of jazz one of them up. I was able to salvage the rope on the top of them, so if you're doing these bells, just keep that in mind as you're taking the rope off to not cut it off. It's just glued on there with some hot glue, so you can just kind of peel it off, and then you're able to reuse that again. So just taking some of my scrap picks from my Christmas stash here, I'm just taking a couple of ends. I'm trying to keep it fairly neutral, so I picked, these came from Walmart, and it's kind of a juniper with a little bit of the white berries on there. You can get them in red or in white, and I stock up on both of these because I just love them. And I'm just gluing a little piece on either side of that hanger on the bell, and then that's where I will put my little ribbon. Now, if you hang this on a tree, I will admit it gets a little lost in a tree because you've already got the pine on your tree. And so if you were to hang it somewhere else, maybe off of like a little knob of like your hutch or something like that, it would be really cute. I just wanted to kind of spark that creative interest, that give you some ideas to not just have to have it be a plain bell if you don't want it to be. These turn out simply beautiful. You can kind of see how you can see the bow on the one bell, but not so much the pine on there. So that's kind of what I was talking about. But these are so pretty. And imagine if you had a whole bunch of these all over your tree, or just a handful of them, or even just use this technique to use these bells somewhere else in your decor. What do you guys think of these? Every year I see these cute little candy cane ornaments or decor that Dollar Tree has. I always pick up a few, and I thought I would have my take at doing a makeover on them, make them look a little more country and a little more farmhouse and just the tinsel look that they come with. So I'm just taking some red and green fabric and I just tore that into several strips. You maybe just need maybe like a yard of a strip of fabric total for each side of the candy cane. You can just kind of eyeball it or use some scraps of what you have, but I'm just going to remove that tinsel. It comes off very easily. You just kind of find an end and it just kind of spirals off of there. You'll notice that there are some little pegs all around the outside of the form of the candy canes. That's what holds the tinsel on. Once you wrap your fabric around there, we're not going to see that at all, so don't worry about those. So I'm just starting at the bottom. I'm going to do a contrasting like a red and a green since it's traditional Christmas colors, but just use whatever colors you want, or you want to do the same colors, whatever. It's just have fun with it and make it yours. I just thought this was kind of fun to do the contrasting red and green. One side being plaid, another side having the stripes on there, I thought was really cute. So I just glued this to the end of my candy cane form, and then I'm just wrapping it around, just making sure as you wrap that fabric that you're going over each layer so you're not going to be able to see that form at all through it. When I get to the end of this strip of fabric, I'm just going to glue that down. That's just going to make it so I can start another strip. With my red fabric, I had a strip long enough that I could just keep going, but my green fabric that I had, since it was a scrap, I didn't have quite as long of a piece, so that's why I'm kind of having to glue it right here. So to pick up my next strip, I'm just going to place a little bit more glue down there, and I'm just going to start this and start wrapping it around again. Now, since this is connected in the middle, you just kind of have to work around that, just kind of going up and over the candy cane form, covering as much of that form as you can. And you'll see when I get to the red color, the green was a little bit easier to do since it was the first color I started with. The red, I'll kind of show you how I work around that, but you end up not being able to see the form at all. But fear not, because we're going to put a little bit of a floral thing on here that's going to cover that middle part. So even if you were to see it or you can't get it to line up just right, it's going to be covered anyway, so you don't have to pay so much or stress about it or pay so much attention to it. So now I'm just going to do a second layer of fabric on each side. This is just because when you look at it, you could still kind of see the little pokey things out coming from the form that I didn't really want to see. I probably would have been fine to leave it, but I thought it would just make it a little bit more plush and nice to add a second layer of fabric. So that's completely optional. You can look at it when you do yours and decide if you would like to do that. It's not 100% necessary, but it does make it look a little bit more high-end in my opinion. So now I'm starting on that red side of the candy cane, and I'm doing the same, just starting at the base. You could start at the top, I guess, if you wanted. I just found it easier to start at the base and just wrapping that around. I really love this red striped fabric because it really kind of mimicked the candy cane, so I was really pleased with how it turned out. Now you can see I'm at that middle part of the form here, so I'm just going to place some glue down so that will hold it in place right there. And I'm kind of just going to pinch it with my thumb, and just obviously don't burn yourself. If you need to use finger protectors, do that, but I'm just holding it down for that to dry and solidify a little bit, and then I will just stretch that fabric up over the top of that candy cane form and kind of start wrapping it that way, just making sure that I can go back over if I need to cover up any of that form showing through. The nice part was, to be honest with you, is this was the red fabric, so if you could see a little bit of that red form peeking out, you couldn't really tell. But again, I will go over this again with a second layer, plus we will have a little floral swag in the middle to cover any areas that you might be able to see, but I feel like I did a pretty good job with not having any of that form peek through. I love making vintage tags to add to things, especially at Christmas time. And so I'm just taking a generic tag here and I'm just going to wrinkle it and crinkle it to give it that really aged look. I just picked these up in a package at Hobby Lobby or even like Staples, you'd be able to find them. But I'm using some distressing ink that's going to age this. So I start with the yellowing one to make it look really vintage. And then I just keep adding a little bit of the darker colors very lightly. You can see how it picks up all of those wrinkles and crinkles, really makes that look aged. I do make sure I go around all of the edge of the tag as well, just so that way you can't see any of the original white on it. Now while that's drying, I'm just taking a couple little pieces of some greenery. These are just from, I keep a little bag of all of my little pieces off of my stems that I use. And this was just some little boxwood from Walmart and then some of the juniper, I believe, from Walmart. But use whatever scraps you have or just a couple little pieces off of a pick. And I'm just using a little bit of twine to wrap around the top to give it like a finished branch look there. So that way you don't see the little plasticky ends on it. And then I'm just going to use some twine to tie this onto my candy canes. Now I did put a little dot of glue behind it to help hold it there, but I also wanted to tie it just to give it a little bit more security. You're not going to see those ties at all unless you look at it directly from the back. When I turn this over, I'm just going to fluff up that greenery and make sure that it looks nice and centered, kind of get it positioned. If you need to add a little bit more glue behind some of your leaves to help them stay where you want, go ahead and do that. Now I'm using my Dollar Tree alphabet stamps here to have this little tag say candy canes. My friend Linda always uses her click stamps from Amazon, and every time I pull out my Dollar Tree stamps, I'm so jealous. I need to save up and buy some of those. The Dollar Tree stamps work well, but they are very tedious to use. So just a fair warning, but they definitely get the job done. So I just tied that tag on there, and then I have this little plaid ribbon here. This was given to me on a gift from years ago that I've just kind of been hanging on to, and I loved the really vintage feel. I love that it's kind of a red plaid since I had the red stripe on the candy cane. I thought it contrasted really well and kind of brought home that vintage look. Now I just tied a loop with some twine and glued that onto the back and let that dry really well so I could use this as an ornament to hang. That's totally optional. It would be even cute hanging off like your China hutch door or something like that. I just think this turned out so beautiful. Definitely an upgrade from that Dollar Tree tinsel. I feel like it's a great form that's underneath there, and you can definitely let your creativity fly with this and make it your own to match your home. What do you guys think of this? For this project, I'm just using some of the sticks, the branches that I picked up at our farm this fall as we were cleaning up, and I have a whole pile of them. My husband kind of has a love-hate relationship with me bringing sticks home from the farm. He loves that I pick them up, but then suddenly realizes that I'm bringing them all home to sit in a pile. Anyhow, I picked out 4 branches here, or sticks, and I had to kind of break one down to be the size that I needed. I'm going to do a really beautiful tree shape out of these. As I was scrolling through for some inspiration on the internet, I saw a couple of these trees done with some sticks, and I thought they were just so lovely and easy. So that's what we're doing here. So as you can see, I have some wire here, just some floral wire works fine. This is covered where it looks in like some type of something to make it look like it's the branches, it's that brown color or something. And I really like that because it kind of kept that organic feel that I'm going for here, that very woodsy type feel. So I'm just going to take my center branch, which is going to be longer than all of them because it will end up sitting in a pot, and I'm going to make a triangle tree, like Christmas tree shape here. So I'm going to take my wire, and this is kind of the hardest part. You may want to be tempted to use some hot glue to help your branches kind of stick together while you're doing this. It's not going to work. The glue does not stick to them. It kept falling. I tried it and it kept coming apart. So you just kind of have to hold them. You have a little bit of time to manipulate your shape after you get your wire tightened. But once you do your first wrap around and tighten it with some pliers, you can see here I will grab my pliers and I'm just twisting that wire. That's just going to make sure that the wire goes super tight into your project, and it's going so these branches don't move. Now, as I twist that wire around in a different direction here, you're just going crisscross with the wire so everything is just held in place. And then when I get my 2 ends together, I'll do the same thing, wrap with some pliers. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here, but you just want to you wrap around one way and then you wrap it around crossways. And so that way you get kind of like an X shape with your floral wire there. And you can see I'll grab that. I'm flipping it around so I can get an easier hold on it here. But with my pliers, I'll just grab my 2 wire ends and then you're just twisting that around to tighten that. That way nothing's going to be sliding out of there or anything like that. Now I'm going to put the bottom shape, that bottom line of the triangle for the Christmas tree shape there. And I'm going to do the same thing where those ends meet on each of those branches. The exact same thing with crisscrossing that wire. Now you could use twine to tie this if you wanted to. I struggle with that whenever I've made pieces where I've had a tie rather than the wire. The wire I feel like just gives you a little bit better of a hold and it's easy to maneuver. So if you're like, oh, I know how to tie this up, I've done that several times, go ahead and do that. That works great too. I just felt like the wire was a little easier for me to work with, especially since like the sticks are going in all different directions. I needed something that would hold them very tightly. But everywhere that there's a connection with your sticks, you're going to do this. So I will go over and do it on the other corner. You'll see here in just a moment. And then where the center branch comes down, I will also do it there so it holds that branch in place. Now the fun part of this is you get to embellish it any way you want and the possibilities are completely endless. So I was kind of going for an asymmetrical look here. I wanted some really woodsy, organic feeling pine boughs on here. So, and I have even these little feathers that to me kind of look like some sticks or something, just a different textural element. And I loved that deep brown color with them. And so you can kind of see I'm going to go down that side of my tree with all of these. And there's a couple different types of pine there, greenery. They're probably not really pine. I'm just saying that because that's all I can think of at the moment, but some different greenery for some contrast. Now this is just a bundle of like a swag of grapevine sticks that I purchased at Hobby Lobby. And just as I need sticks, I just pull them out a couple at a time. Now I'm going to grab a couple of these and make a little bundle of sticks, different sizes of sticks, some a little bit shorter, some a little bit longer. And I'm just wrapping some floral wire around the top of these to bundle them all together. And again, I'm just tightening that wire because I don't want these to fall out or anything. I just want to make sure they're nice and secure. Now I'm going to slip this up on this side of my tree, kind of get it as much as I can up underneath where I've already tightened with that wire. And if I need to go back in with more wire to tighten this in now, you can do that as well. And then I'm going around the center here with these branches, or not the center. What I'm doing is I'm wrapping these kind of around like the grapevine is naturally growing down the side of the tree. It gives a little bit of texture. To hold these down in the middle, I'll grab just another little piece of that floral wire and go around the center here. And I apologize when I go to do this here and tighten this, I completely go out of frame, but I'm just twisting this around. It blends in and it's just what's going to give an extra secure, like stableness to those little teeny branches going down. And so that way they're nice and secure. I even grab a couple of the little grapevine branches and do the same thing over on this other side, just again to give it a little bit of texture. I just wanted this to look like it was just something that was gathered out in the woods and just made from natural pieces that you would find and just look really kind of whimsical almost. Really going for that woodland type of vibe that is so popular. I love the neutrality of those DIYs and the feel of them, just kind of like a very, I keep saying organic because that's what comes to mind, but just kind of like that organic, natural feel. The fun thing about these DIYs like this is you get to put them up as soon as you start decorating for your holiday season, and they can last all until you're ready to get your springtime out, because it's not specifically like Christmas. I mean, you can make it that way, but I mean, they really have more of like that winter feel. I love the rich wood tones and the browns with that greenery. I just think it's so pretty. So now you can see here, I'm just tying on the different greenery that I have here. I'll slip it in, and then I go kind of do like a dry fit. I'm using a little bit of hot glue right now just so I can have this kind of be, it's not for permanent hold, it's just to kind of hold it in place until I can get my floral wire to wire it in so it becomes permanent, because the glue will not hold on these branches. I think I mentioned that earlier. They will fall off. So you just want to make sure it's just to hold it until I can get my floral wire there and secure it more tightly. I even put those little feathers in there. I just thought that was such a fun little look. Now these bells came from Hobby Lobby. And this is kind of another little DIY within a DIY, but you kind of can't tell on here. The color of the gold is so yellow and it's almost streaky. They're very inexpensive, and they definitely look very inexpensive. So we're going to give them a makeover and kind of make them look more like those traditional farmhouse bells that you see in all of the decor, especially at Christmas time. We're going to start out by giving these a good coat of black chalk paint, and then this is just some gold rub and buff that I am using here. This stuff is so amazing, and it gives such a much better gold color than the tone that was already on these bells. So I'm just going to squeeze out just a little bit. You need just a teeny bit to work with. Now you can use your finger too if you would like to. That works well, but I'm just taking that little bit on my paper towel, and I'm just going to dab the excess off and just kind of go in and just start rubbing around. You can see immediately how that starts to make it look shiny there. In fact, it took me a minute to look at it and be like, wow, that actually worked out really, really well. It's such a beautiful tone that it gives, and the contrast between the black and that gold is going to give you that very rustic look. Even if you don't love the distressed with the black and the gold, if you purchase these bells from Hobby Lobby, I highly recommend just rubbing this gold over them to enhance them and make them look a lot like much better. And if you see these bells in person, again, it doesn't quite pick up on camera, but if you see them in person, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's such a fake color that's on there, and it's streaky. So it's kind of fun to be able to enhance them and have them look kind of tailored to your taste. I love the contrast with the black and the gold because it does make it look very rustic, which is what I'm going for. I want these bells to look like they've sat out in the woods for years. Hopefully that's what I achieve. You can see here, I'm just going to show you the original color. You can kind of see a little bit the gold between that original one. Again, it doesn't pick up how bad they really are on camera. But now I've just hung my bells over the top of the tree there, wired them in with some floral wire. And then this is just an IKEA pot with some styrofoam and some moss on the top of it to tone it down so it's not so stark silvery, looks maybe like it's rusted. I'm just taking some antiquing wax on a brush, and I'm just going around all of the ridges on this. Whatever pot you have to put this in, you can use your imagination. I really loved the look of this galvanized metal. And then just when I'm doing the antiquing wax, I'm paying special attention to hit all of the little edges and everything where it would naturally rust. But look at how beautiful and elegant this is. It's so simple, and I feel like it just really captures just that Christmas feel. It's got that traditional Christmas tree shape, and I just love the natural whimsical greenery that's on there. I think this is so beautiful, and it was so easy to do, especially if you can just go out in your yard or wherever, find some sticks. If you don't have sticks, some dowels from the craft store or your local hardware store would work just as easily to make this. I would love to know your thoughts on this. These are just some wooden square tags that I picked up at the craft store. I believe I've seen similar to this at Dollar Tree, but really I just wanted this nice square rectangle shape, and I'm going to paint one of them in white and one of them in black. And then I have these cute snowflake cutouts that came from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to do the same thing with them, paint one of them in white and one of them in black. I really loved the neutral look of the black and the white with these. I'll take the black snowflake and put it onto the white background, and I'll take the white snowflake and put it onto the black background to give kind of a contrasting look. Now these are really cute ornaments, but they also make really fun tags to put on gifts if you like to do that sort of thing. I just used some of the super glue from Dollar Tree here, just some of the gel. I felt like hot glue would really kind of seep out between all that delicate area on those snowflakes. And then of course I just had some looped twine that I fed through to give me my hanging part on here to do. I'll just have a quick look at them here on my tree. They look so cute like this, but again, they would be really cute tags. Such a fun and simple project, super quick and easy. So this technique will work with any type of plastic ornament like this. This came from Dollar Tree, but any shape that you can find. I'm just going to take a Christmas napkin that I have. I picked this up at Home Goods just because everybody always asks, and they are one of the best places to find napkins. And then I'm just going to cover this globe ornament in Mod Podge. Now I got a little ahead of myself here because I covered it in Mod Podge, but then I realized I needed to cut the napkin because the trees, when the napkin's folded, they're the right way, but when you unfold it, they were all upside down, and I wanted them to be right side up. So I start working here and realize very quickly I had already separated my napkin from the second layer. However, I realized that these were very fancy napkins and there was a third layer on there. So if you get to this point and you realize, oh dang, I forgot to take my layers, separate those, it's okay. Just kind of tear it off the best you can, refreshing your Mod Podge, and then you're just going to move forward here. So I'm just refreshing that. You can even spritz a little bit of water on your ornament and use your brush to kind of, that will help make it so it's all sticky again. So now I place my napkin down starting at the top of the ornament, and then I just tear off the pieces. Since this is round, you're going to need to do this so you have everything kind of covering where it needs to cover, minimal wrinkles on there. However, I do something to kind of embrace all of the wrinkles on this, and you'll have to let me know if you like it or not. But I'm just not separating, but I'm starting at the top, working down. I'm smoothing out a little bit with my finger. You do want to go in with the Mod Podge and kind of go over the area that's going to get all of your edges stuck down. And so then I'm just going to bring my napkin back up, overlap, and I'll just kind of pull it taut there to kind of go to the bottom. Now I'm not pushing these down on the bottom yet. I do the bottom very last, and I'll show you that in just a moment here. You can see I will then come in and just tear my napkin. I like to tear rather than cut into strips, and yes, you could start out with tearing strips and not do it this way and just have all your strips pre-done. But I don't like cutting because I like the natural edge with doing decoupage that the napkins, when you rip them or tear them, that it gives you, because it just kind of is seamless. You don't see that straight cut edge. And I really do like that. So just keep that in mind. But whether you tear this ahead of time or you do it how I am, I was just kind of, in my mind, this was quicker. Whether or not it actually was, I don't know. But I'm just going with it and just kind of having fun. There are so many different fun napkin prints that you can find out there to do this with. That you could have so much fun coming up with a bunch of different ones all over a tree. And it's a pretty inexpensive way to make a big impact. So after all of your globe ornament has been covered here and you've got all of these kind of hanging off at the bottom, you can see I'm just going to start to fold them over one at a time and tear off the excess. So I just want to make sure that the bottom is covered, and then just tear anything off so it's not so bulky down at the bottom. And then between each layer, I'll go through with my brush. You can see I'll tear these off here, and I think what I do is I go back, I bend them back, and then I use my Mod Podge to just make sure that everything is being fixed down. It's all glued. Everything you can see here, I'll tear this one, put it down, and tear off the excess. And this is pretty easy. You could actually do this with if you had like a youth group, or you had kids or grandkids or somebody that you wanted to try this with. This is kind of a fun project for them to do and personalize, because it looks so nice when it's done, and I just think it's a lot of fun. Now you'll go over the entire thing with Mod Podge to make sure everything is covered completely. That's going to protect your napkin from any water or anything that might get on it. So you also want to pay attention to to whether you're using a gloss Mod Podge or a matte Mod Podge, because it will make a difference with how it shows up on your ornament. If you want to stop here, you can, but I'm taking a little bit of Rub and Buff and I'm going to go over the top of the ornament. You could leave it just that silver color if you want. I feel like this kind of makes it look a little more high end. But as I was putting the gold on there, I did realize that I might want to try and put some all over the napkin. And it really does have a lot of texture to it, and it helps like all of the little texture from the napkins pick up that gold. So this would be completely optional. It was kind of one of those I got to this point and I thought, well, let's give it a try and see how it turns out. And I really do love the way that it does turn out. But again, if you're using gold, Rub and Buff, or silver, or you don't do this step at all, it's totally a matter of personal preference. I have this velvet ribbon that came from Hobby Lobby. It was actually in the scrapbook section, so if you're looking for that, but you can use whatever type of hanger you want. I just thought this green velvet matched very well, gave it kind of a very classy high-end look. So I just tied that on so I'll have something to hang it from a branch on my tree. I think this turned out so beautiful. I really love it. You can still see the Christmas trees coming through on the napkin, and I think the gold just kind of gives it a little bit more of an elevated touch to it. Again, a matter of personal preference. Would you guys have left it without the gold? Would you do you like the way that it looks? I would love to know down in the comments. This project is inspired by some ornaments that I saw at Vintage Market Days recently. It almost looked like they were postcards, or in this case I'm using Christmas cards to make ornaments, or even just some little cute hanging decor. So I just found these two Christmas cards. Now you're going to need two of each design because you're going to do kind of like a pop out, and I'll show you exactly what I mean with that coming along here. But I'm just going to cut down one of them as my background, and then I'm just using some cardboard. This is just an Amazon box here. You could easily use some foam core, some thick poster board, cardboard, and if you want to decorate the back, rather than having the plain cardboard on the back, you could put some scrapbook paper. However you would like to do it, wherever you're hanging this, you'll know exactly how you want it. Now this first one, I'm just using some spray adhesive. It is the Gorilla Glue. That just makes sure you're in a well-ventilated area if you're using that. And then I'm just going to cut, I rolled it with my brayer as you saw, and I'm just going to cut out the edge of the cardboard to be even with my, not postcard, but my Christmas card. Now, as I'm looking at this, I should have done the plain cardboard side out, but again, it's easy to fix because you can just cut some scrapbook paper down to put on the back, and that way you can just see just the scrapbook paper rather than the cardboard. Now, I'm just going to clean any little frayed edges up or anything with my fingernail file there. And for my second one, I'm using some Elmer's school glue. Now I get asked a lot, doesn't your school glue dry out and have your pieces fall off? I have used this school glue for years, the Elmer's purple school glue. I've never had anything come unstuck. I think the problem is if you're having that happen is you're not getting a good enough bond between your surfaces. So that is why it is important to use a brayer, because that's going to make sure that no oxygen or air gets in between to dry out the glue. It's just forming that tight bond that's going to make your surfaces adhere together permanently. Now what I'm going to do is just take a piece of each of these second card and cut out as my 3D element. So I cut the car, the little cute truck. I just think that truck and the fact that it's turquoise and not red, I love it. I think it's so cute. Red would be cute too, but I just think the turquoise is real fun with that red barn. And then this little wreath here on the second card. So virtually you could take any design, any card, and cut out an element like this and do this with it. It's super simple and easy. And how fun would this be to have a tree of some really fun decorated items, or even if you're just going to do it to make a card to give someone, just make it a little extra special. So I just covered both of these with Mod Podge, and now I'm just going to go in with some iridescent glitter. You do any color. You wouldn't even have to do glitter, but I just thought that it just kind of makes it a little more fun. Again, I know glitter is kind of you either love it or you hate it. Or maybe with Christmas you can stand it a little bit, I don't know, but you do you, whatever works best. Even just a little bit of glitter around the edge of this 3D element so it's not completely covered would be really pretty also. Now I'm just taking some other pieces of that cardboard box that I had and just cutting out a little square. I felt like it was the perfect height to give that 3D element. I'm just using some hot glue, and I will just match up my truck on this one. I'm trying to get all of my glue strings off here. There was a lot. Plus it gives your glue a second to dry, so it's not going to come all the way like spilling over the edges. But I'm going to match up that truck. You still have a couple of minutes here to kind of get it all in place before that glue completely dries, which is nice, so you can kind of manipulate it if you need to. The wreath was kind of big, so I put 2 of the cardboard pieces on the back, and you'll see here, I'm just going to put a little bit of hot glue there. I will flip these over and then place it down. And again, just manipulate it so you can get it to match up to the design. You want to stand up or look at it straight on, or set it up like this so you can make sure that you're getting it completely lined up exactly how you need to. If you're looking at it where it's flat on the table, it doesn't give you that perfect lineup, so just make sure you're putting it up or standing up, somehow looking at it straight on. Now I thought it would be really fun on these to kind of tie in that background to the glitter on the 3D element. So I just run around the edge with a little bit of Mod Podge, and then I'm doing a little bit of silver glitter around the edge of this one. On the wreath that says, I think it says Joy to the World. Yep, I'm going to do a little bit of gold because I thought that tied it in. I didn't have any red glitter. If I had had red, I probably would have done that where the edge of the card was already red, but unfortunately my daughters used the red glitter for 4th of July decorations, so that's totally good. I'm just doing what I had. I just thought it was fun to add that little element to it. Now I'm going to use my crocodile to punch a couple of holes in this so I can tie a little hanger on there. You could glue one to the back if you wanted to, if you didn't want to punch a hole in the front. That's totally up to you. I just liked the idea of having the hanger go from one side of the top to the other side. I felt like that would just help it hang a little bit nicer when placing it on a tree or like a little peg or something like that. I just really liked that look on it. I'm just using some twine. If you had some fancy ribbon or some baker's twine even would be very cute. You can see I have one hanging here, and the other one I have just pulled that twine tight so it could stand up to be displayed. But I think these are so beautiful and fun. Such a great DIY to do. Easy, doesn't take much time, perfect to do with kids or a group of people. Whether you're doing it for ornaments or cards to give someone, I really love this idea. What do you guys think of these? I love using napkins to do different decor items with, and I found these at Joann's. I got them on sale for like 60% off or something, but I loved the edge. Now inside of this pot is just some joint compound that's been watered down, and it's dried for over 24 hours. So I just want to let you know something in the bottom of your pot you're going to want to give it some stability. Now these napkins have the most beautiful edge to them, and so I thought they would be so cute turned upside down on a pot, and I'll show you what I mean by that. These were 3-ply napkins, so I peeled the 2 layers off of the back so that way you're down to just the one surface, the one ply that you're working with. I'm just covering the entire surface with Mod Podge, and then I'll take a brush and smooth that all out so you just have a thin coat of the Mod Podge all over. And then I'm using the base of this napkin as a trim around the edge of the pot here. Now I'm leaving a little bit of an excess on the top so that way I can fold it over and have it go onto the inside of the pot. You're not really going to see on the inside of the pot, but just in case. And I'm taking my time because I don't want these, I want it to be as straight as possible. And when you're lifting it up, if you feel your napkin start to tear, you just kind of want to stop. But these napkins were actually such good quality that I could peel them up and kind of manipulate them, and they worked fine. Now I'm just going to tear off where I want the excess to be removed. Tearing it's going to give it a natural edge, and it's going to blend in. You're not even going to see that it was torn. And you can see here how I'm folding that excess over the top of the pot there, and it gives that ring on the pot that consistency all the way around. Now I went and cut off my excess, and I maybe got a little too liberal with how much I cut off, but I'll show you how I fixed that here because I want it to wrap all the way around the bottom of the pot. So now I'm just going around and making sure that the napkin is placed on that Mod Podge that's on the pot. I don't have an excess of Mod Podge or extra Mod Podge on my brush yet. I'll put that on once I get it placed down. Right now I'm just trying to get all of the surface of the napkin touched to the surface of the pot. And here I'll put some on the bottom, and I'm just going to rub this around with my brush here, and then I will start to fold over the edge of the napkin. So you can see I'm just going to fold that over there. And you can kind of see as I do this that there's a little spot left over in the middle. If I would have paid attention to how much I cut off the bottom of the napkin, I probably wouldn't have run into that issue. But it works out fine because luckily we're working with napkins and Mod Podge, so fixes are super simple to do here. Now I'm going to take the Mod Podge and put it all over the pot. This is going to give the protection that you're going to need on the outside of the napkin. So that way it's going to be water resistant. You're not going to have that napkin tear or anything. This is just giving that protective layer and making sure that it is all bonded to the surface. Now you can see I'm just taking a torn piece of napkin and I'm just going to place this down on the base there, and then I'll set it down and just kind of tear off all of the edges around. You don't need to cut this with a scissor because I feel like you get more of an edge that way and it does not look as clean. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but when you tear it, it kind of leaves those little fibers of the napkin. So when you put the Mod Podge on it and place it down, it's going to kind of disappear into itself. And so it really helps it blend in much more with a torn edge than a cut edge. Now, and you can use water to tear the edge. This one, I didn't really need the water because I didn't need to be super precise. So I just tore it drier with the little Mod Podge that it had on it, and it seemed to work just fine. I found this bottle brush tree at Walmart. I loved how it had the different sections on it. So I'm just going to take off. Now you could leave this little wood stem on there if you want. It's going to be hidden in the pot. So I thought, well, I can probably use it for another project or something. Do you guys ever do that? Take pieces off and think, oh, I'll use it. And then it just goes into a stash. I'd love to know if I'm the only one that does that or if you do that. So let me know in the comments. So I'm just taking some scrap styrofoam and gluing that into the bottom of the pot. That's just going to give it the stability there. And then taking some Spanish moss here. I love to buy my Spanish moss at the craft store. I feel like you get a better deal than you do at the Dollar Tree. I know I say that all the time, but it really is such a good value. And I'm just taking just whatever amount I feel looks good, and I'll just put some hot glue down on that styrofoam, and that's just what's going to hold that moss in place. When you do place your Spanish moss down, just know that it's got, like, that glue can seep through and burn you. So either wear some finger protectors or just be very careful when you're doing this. I'm tucking the Spanish moss in around the edge so it's not completely like haywire and crazy off all of the edges there. Kind of helps it adhere also. So I'm just taking a paintbrush. I'm just going to place a little hole in the middle of that Spanish moss and the styrofoam. So that's where I'm going to stick my tree. Now I'm taking just a teeny bit of Mod Podge, and I probably should have done this before I put the Spanish moss on, but I didn't know I wanted to do it until this point. So I want to put a little bit of glitter around the edge to kind of have a little shimmer where that snow is, not overboard. I know some of you were like, ooh, no with the glitter. And then I have a lot of you who were like, yes, at Christmas time, glitter is totally okay. I've never used it in my Christmas DIYs until this year, but I'm loving it. So it's just a little bit to give it a little bit of a sparkle. Now, once this is completely dried, I'm just wrapping some twine around this. You want to make sure that Mod Podge is dry before you kind of move on to these next steps so you're not tearing up that napkin at all. So I just wrap it around 3 or 4 times and then just tie it off. I don't think I show it, but I do put a dot of hot glue in the back to help hold those up. Since this is at an angle of the pot, the twine can slip down a little bit. So I just put a little bit there. It's hidden underneath the twine. You won't see it, but it'll just make sure those don't slip off there. I made a finger bow just by wrapping some twine around my finger 3 or 4 times and then tied it off in the middle. And I'm just going to tie that on here to kind of add a little bow. Now you don't have to do this embellishment at this point. You could stop at any point or do something totally different. But I have these little rusted jingle bells that came on like a string of them. I've used them in a few of my other projects this year. I'm just going to glue a couple of them on here. And I didn't love the look of just 2. So I decided to get a little bit of greenery that I had and glue that into the sides kind of underneath the bell coming out in front of the bow. You can kind of see it's just the tip of some greenery, extra greenery I had. And I do that on both sides, and then I add a 3rd bell on top. Since sometimes things look better in groups of 3, I feel like that looks much better than just the 2 bells that I had. And I love the little addition of the greenery. I take a bunch of hot glue and place that down into the hole that we made with the end of the paintbrush in the styrofoam and in the Spanish moss. It's just a little bit of a stem that you have to work with here, so I just really want to hold on to that to make sure it's secure and that it's dry and that glue really takes hold. Here's the final product, and I think it is absolutely beautiful. I think this really encompasses that woodland type of feel that is so popular this year, as well as using the bottle brush trees in all of your decor. And I really think this is a piece that you could leave out all season, so even through January, and even with the jingle bells and everything on there, I just think this is so fun and has that rustic farmhouse touch. I would love to know what you guys think of this. Are you a fan of the decoupage napkins on the pots? Because I'm loving doing all sorts of different projects for all different seasons with them. I really love the look of vintage paper ornaments, so I cut all of these designs out with my cutting machine. If you have a die cut, you could use that. They sell shapes like this at the craft store in the scrapbook section that you could get. You could even cut them by hand. Whatever you would like. You don't even have to necessarily do this part. I just love the trim and the edge that this adds to the ornament. So I want them to look really distressed and really aged. So I'm just wrinkling all of the paper, putting lots of crinkles in there. And then you could do a couple of things to distress and age these. You could put them in some tea or coffee to dye them that way. I have these distressing inks that I picked up at Joann's years ago. They do sell them at Hobby Lobby, I've seen. You can get them on Amazon. But I'm just rubbing the ink pad directly onto my background here, onto these little cutout shapes. And then I'm using a darker color that will help all of those little wrinkles and crinkles pop, so it really hits home that aged vintage look. And I just go over front and back and make sure that everything is really covered good. Now I'm taking some water, just my mister bottle, and I'm spraying that all over to give an even different element of the age look to them, so you can see how they look there. It makes that ink run a little bit. It makes little water spots appear. It really makes it look like these have just been sitting in the attic for decades upon decades, and that's exactly what I'm going for. The hardest part of this whole project is finding the graphics that you want to use. Now, I searched and searched through the Graphics Fairy's website, which she has amazing graphics, so I'll leave the link to her website down in my description box. I created one of these using a couple of different images and some things in Canva that I did, so I can leave a link to that if you want to print that out. And some of them did come from Canva. I just printed a bunch of different images. You could easily use Christmas cards, old postcards that you picked up like at the thrift or vintage antique store, anything like that that you would like to use, but it is just very easy to hop online and look for some vintage graphics and just do it that way. So I'm just using my trusty Elmer's school glue. This is just the purple glue stick on the back. I will lay that down and center it on each of the designs, and then I'm just going over with my brayer to make sure that I get those pieces bonded together really well. Now I'm going to take some Mod Podge and put this over. This is going to seal and coat these. You do want to make sure that your ink is completely dry. I did print these out with an inkjet printer, so I left them overnight to dry completely before putting the Mod Podge on the front and the back. Now I've seen with some of these vintage paper ornaments, they use like the tinsel or the silvery kind of pipe cleaner here. I thought it would be really fun to add these. These just came from the Dollar Tree, and I was hesitant at first, but I really like the way that they look. So I'm just going to put a thin row or bead of hot glue and just kind of work in sections so I don't have a lot of hot glue seeping out. I don't want these to look like they were homemade or kind of like, I just want them to look high end and like something you could sell at a craft fair or in like a craft show or something like a cute little store. I have seen these in some of the stores that I've gone into in my travels that they sell ornaments like this for a lot of money. So I was kind of going for that vibe here, but I think selling a set of these, if you're into that or that's something you're looking for, would be a great idea and a great addition to your booth. If you're not into selling things or don't want to sell them, they would just be a great addition to your decor or to your tree, or a great gift for somebody who maybe decorates with more of this vintage feel. So again, I'm just lining up the pipe cleaner. They weren't long enough to go around each one time, so I had to add a little bit onto each one. So I would just take a little bit here, you can see, and I will glue that on and then just cut off the excess. So just showing you on these square ornaments, I don't do like a hard corner on them. I kind of do a more rounded corner with the pipe cleaner there. I just use my finger to kind of have it go around that. So that way it has kind of a more natural look to it. So just pointing that out. But I just think these are looking so cute. And I love this, reminds me of an old postcard. and it's so beautiful. And I just love how the little silver flecks of the pipe cleaner just add an extra little sparkle and detail. But I'm going to add a little bit of extra sparkle to these as well. Some of these ornaments that I have seen have had a little bit of glitter added. I'm just doing a little bit of it. This is totally optional. I know glitter's not everybody's thing, but I'm just going, like, for instance, on Santa's little trim on his coat and his hat, maybe on his little arm cuff there, and just putting a little bit of Mod Podge. And then I'm just going to pour some glitter over the top of that. Now I'm just using the cheap Walmart glitter that I bought at Walmart. I don't even know what brand it is, but it was just like the only kind of glitter that Walmart had in their craft section. So nothing super special. So you can see it's just a little bit of sparkle to take it to the next level, make it a little bit extra. And some of them don't have a lot of, like, Santa's trim, for instance. And so I would just pick some random toys to have a little bit of sparkle on, just somewhere where it would naturally look like it would glisten or something. And I just shake that around, as you can see here, and then just tap off the excess glitter. On this one right here, there was a lot of snow, and so I thought it would be fun to kind of add that. You're just going for, you don't want to over the top. You're just going for something to take it to the next level, have it look a little bit more high end than just leaving it plain as it was. It would be fine to leave it that way. However, it's just a matter of personal preference. I just feel like the ornaments like this that I have seen do have a little bit of the glitter and sparkle like this, so I thought it would be fun to add that touch as well. You can see how it's just a little bit, but it really does just make it so much more beautiful. And these images are beautiful, and they would be so fun to do so many different projects with, not just the ornaments. Now I need a way to hang these, and so I'm just using my Crop-a-Dial. You can see here it's like Crop, C-R-O-P. I'll leave a link to this down in my description box. I use this for a lot of different crafts. It was very much a game changer. It originally is meant to do grommets with, and I usually use it to punch holes in different things, but I'm going to show you here how you do the grommet. It comes with these, and you can buy them also at the craft store, but you just place them on the main, like, mouth part of this. And when you stick your ornament in, you just want to make sure it's facing the correct way, so the bent part of the grommet will be in the back, and you just push it down, and you can see how that just adds, rather than just having a hole punched in there, it gives such a finished look to it. So I just continue on and do this to all of them, and I go with that kind of brassy, like aged brass color, because I felt like that would really hit home that vintage style. But you can see you just clamp that down, and it creates that beautiful finish on there. I'm just taking some regular twine here, and I'm going to feed that through each of the ornaments. So I just bend it over, and I take the loop and feed it from the front of the ornament to the back. So I will just push that through and grab that, and then you'll just take the excess tails and pull them through. You can see I missed one there, so I'm just going to pull that other one through. And this is such a finished look rather than just tying it off on the ornament. I love that when you do this, it makes the ornament face outward, and so it doesn't like turn to the side on your tree at all, or wherever you're going to place this. And then I just looped it to tie a knot in the top, and I'm just cutting off the tails now. And I just you don't want the tails to be too long, but I do kind of just go put my thumbnail and my finger over them to kind of fray them just a little bit. For some reason, I feel like that just gives it a little bit more of a high-end look to it, rather than having it be so crisp and looking like it was just barely cut with the scissors. Like, it gives it kind of a warm feel. I don't know how to explain it, but you can kind of see what it does. So it's just a matter of if you like that or not. Now I'm just doing the same with each of the other ornaments, but what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I'll place them on top of one another to make sure that the hanging tassel, or not the tassel, but the twine, that it's all the same length. So that way, if you were to display these somewhere, they're all hanging at a similar level. You don't want one being super short and one being super long. It just gives it more of a clean look. I am just in awe of all four of these together displayed like this. I mean, one is absolutely beautiful on its own, but to have a collection like this hanging on your tree, I just think these are going to be so beautiful. Now, as of when I made these, it was October, so I don't have my tree up, so this is the best that I can do to show you with these hanging from a garland here. I'll have to show some pictures of them hanging on my tree once that's all up and decorated, but I just feel like these are such a beautiful addition. I mean, would you love getting these as a gift if someone made them for you, or would you purchase these at a craft bazaar or something? I just feel like they're beautiful, and what a fun touch to add to your Christmas decor. I love how this DIY turns out, and it is such a show-stopping piece. Oh, it's so beautiful, you guys. You're going to start out using some of these hoop orbs from Dollar Tree. Now, if you can't find these, because I know they're kind of elusive at some Dollar Trees, some embroidery hoops would work well. The bamboo hoops they have at Dollar Tree, even like at your craft store, down like the macrame aisle, you can find some hoops like this. So just something, you want at least 3 of them. The one from Dollar Tree came with 4, and this is the larger size that Dollar Tree has. They have 2 different sizes. So depending on how big you want to make yours, you'll just kind of have to do one of the larger, the small ones. Now, they come with these wonderful little metal fixtures here to try and help you space this out. They're horrible to try and figure. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to read the instructions, which I could not figure out. I couldn't. It was just so horrible, you guys. So the best place for these little metal fixtures is in the trash. Take your zip ties. You can buy a pack of these in the automotive section at Dollar Tree. I love them. They are perfect when you're making wreaths or floral arrangements, this included, because we're kind of doing a floral arrangement with this. You're going to set your zip tie in, and you're just going to tighten that up. And then you can kind of see how your rings, you're wanting them to make kind of a cross. Now, watch what I'm doing. I have a hard time kind of verbalizing this, but you're going to take a zip tie and you're going to put it on in the opposite direction as you did that first one on the other side. What that's going to do, and you'll be able to feel this as you're doing this, you'll be able to see that this is what's going to keep it open. If you do the zip tie the exact same way, it'll just go closed. So you can kind of see here with the next one, I'm going to take that ring and put that inside, and I'll put a zip tie through this one as well. And I'm going to do this with all of these rings, as many as you're doing in your project. And you just want to make sure that as you're putting them in and doing your zip ties, that you're doing it so that the rings will stay open. You're trying to create that orb. This really is much easier than dealing with that stupid little metal thing they give you. And it's really, really easy to use these zip ties, and I think this works really smooth. I'm even using my pliers to pull the zip ties extremely tight just to make sure it does hold everything open. And I'll just use that with my pliers with a little bit of tension. I also went ahead and cut all of the tails of the zip ties off. Just be very careful. You just don't want to cut yourself on a zip tie or anything. So just make sure there's no sharp edges when you do that. Now I'm just taking a piece of styrofoam here just to kind of cut into a square piece to put at the base of the orb here. And so you can kind of see, I'm just going to push that down. Here we go. Get that all punched in there where that zip ties and everything sits. And then I use just a lot of hot glue. I know hot glue and styrofoam are not the best of friends, but I put a bunch on there and I let it dry thoroughly before I move ahead with my next step. That way that styrofoam is nice and secure. Now comes the fun part here of being able to embellish this. Now everything I do, take with a grain of salt. You can decorate this any way that you would want. I'm going to take these grapevine sticks here. I buy a bundle of them at the floral accent section at Hobby Lobby. I've seen them at Michael's and at Joann's. It's just, I pull the little sticks out of the little bundle there and use them in different floral arrangements. When I'm going for that really woodland vibe, they are perfect. Now I'm starting at the top of the orb and I'm just kind of circling these around. The grapevine is so nice because it has kind of like a bendability to it, almost like wire. And so it actually circles around these orbs really well. I just thought this would disguise the metal on these if you were using like the bamboo hoops or I keep wanting to say emery boards, but they're not emery boards. Oh my gosh, embroidery hoops. When you use embroidery hoops, you may really not have an issue of having the wire show. And in all truthfulness, the wires would look fine if you just left them blank. I just really wanted this to look woodsy and like it was just made out of something that you found out in the forest. So that's why I wrapped all of these with that grapevine. After I get the grapevine all wound on there, it's time to start building our base, which is our floral piece here. And so I take several different pieces of greenery. I picked all of these up at Hobby Lobby. You guys, I shop at Hobby Lobby all the time because I literally have one less than a mile from my house. But any craft store that you would be able to go to, you'd be able to find this greenery. And right now, I feel like it's on sale at all of these different places at Hobby Lobby. It's 50% off right now. So I picked up a bunch of different ones to just kind of have a whole bunch of variety and textures, things that kind of all looked like that natural look here. I didn't want the real fake plasticky looking stuff, but I'm really pleased with everything. So you're just going to kind of work to begin with in a symmetrical way. So you can kind of see there, I stuck that one pine in. I will go to the next corner and stick the next piece in. I'm putting a little bit of glue. That's just going to give you that permanent hold. And you can kind of see how symmetrical I am there, that each of the corners has one of those. That's how I start out, is just adding pieces in that symmetrical way, going all the way around. That's what's going to give you the fullness that you need. It's just important as you're doing this to kind of keep turning it, adding your greenery. And when you look at it and you go, ooh, I don't like the way that looks, it's so easy to just pull it out and stick it somewhere else. Do not glue it until you know for sure that's where you want it though. But it is nice on some of the bigger pieces to add a little bit of glue so that way they are not going to fall out of here. Especially if this is going to go outdoors or somewhere where you have high winds or something, you want to make sure that those pieces are nice and secure. When you're using this many types of greenery, it's really hard to mess this up in my opinion. So just go with what feels good and what looks good. Just making sure that you're spinning your piece to give it that nice symmetrical look. Now you can kind of see, and I'll show you, I apologize, I don't show it here because it's kind of more at the end. There's a bucket that I have under here that I picked up at Vintage Market Days, and that's actually going to be what I set this on for my base. So what I'm doing is setting this on here and seeing how it flops over the edge. So if you have a piece that you're going to set this on, I would recommend doing that every once in a while to make sure that you're building it to what you need. Now I have these antlers that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. They were only like a couple of dollars and I thought they would be so cute and so whimsical to bring that nice woodland feel, that real natural tones. I love the ivories and the browns and the greens and everything that comes with this style of Christmas decor. And then I have this darling little owl that I found. Oh my gosh, I thought that was perfect. He actually inspired this whole piece when I found that little owl. And I just thought he was so adorable. Now I'm taking, this is from Walmart, this white berried juniper, I think is what it's called. And so I just thought, I stuck in these two pieces right here and looked at it and then went, okay, I actually really do like that. It brought a little bit more of a winter feel into it. And so if you wanted to add some color into this, definitely some red berries would look really beautiful, or even some gold or something like that would definitely be really pretty. Now I just put a couple of different pine cones there at varying heights next to my little owl friend. I feel like he needs a name. We need to name this cute little owl something. If you have some ideas, let me know down in the comments. I love when you guys come up with names for my little friends that I have in my pieces. You guys come up with some of the cutest names. I absolutely love it. So I just glued a couple of little like nuts that I had that were in a potpourri container. I think there's some kind of nuts. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure, but they match the antlers perfectly. So I glued a couple of those in to tie that kind of ivory or lighter brown tan color in. Now I'm just taking the floral wire that looks like grapevine. It has this coating or this stuff wrapped on it. It actually blends very well in with the grapevine and looks like it's part of that. I'm wrapping this kind of in between each of those little wire rings. That way it's going to cover any part of the zip ties that would still be showing, and it also is securing the grapevine at the top. And so this is definitely a crucial step here. Now, right now, I just happen to make a little loop that I added onto the top, totally optional. If it's not your thing, that's great. A lot of the ones I saw online like this had that little hook on the top. And it was so nice because if I decide I want to hang this, I definitely can. It is absolutely beautiful and would be so pretty hanging. Now I'm going to spin my wire with my pliers there to make sure it's nice and tight and secure, so that way it's not going to fall or come apart or anything. And then any excess wire that's hanging, I just trim that off. And then I'm just bending it up with my plier just to make sure that there's no sharp edges that are going to catch on anything. Now this part of the DIY actually took the longest and is totally optional. I wrapped fairy lights around each of these wires to light this up, and I really think this makes this piece. But look, you guys, I love how this turns out. I think this is so beautiful. I found pieces like this online that were over $200 for smaller than this. This is so beautiful. I have a little bit invested in this. I think my bucket I picked up at Vintage Market Days for like $10, I believe. And then I probably spent about $25-ish in greenery for this piece. So definitely if you have some scraps or you wanted to use stuff from Dollar Tree, you could cut down on the cost there. But I mean, pennies on the dollar for what these cost retail. And I just think this is so beautiful. I love this sweet little owl. Isn't he just the cutest? Oh, I just love him. And the fairy lights make this piece, but you could definitely have it without the fairy lights, and it would still be absolutely beautiful. But what a fun way to bring that woodsy feeling into your home at Christmas time. What do you guys think of this piece? I have these wooden mitten pieces here, and you can find wooden mitten cutouts at like Dollar Tree, at the craft store, online, Amazon, I've seen them. So I just took a plain wood pair and gave them a green coat of paint, just what matches my decor for Christmas. So you could do them in any color, bright green, forest green, do them red, blue, whatever color, you get my point there. But I'm just taking some spackling in a little cup here and mixing some paint into it. I want to make the fluff on these mittens look really textured and fluffy, nice. I just wanted to do something to help that part stand out rather than just have it be like typical white paint. So I'm kind of just going in a stippling motion up and down. And I'll do this like 3 or 4 times to make sure this texture is really thick on here, letting it dry really well in between each coat since it is so thick. I do use my heat tool to kind of help dry it in between coats, but you can kind of see I just take a bunch out of my cup, my mixture that I've made there, and then I just start spreading it around just in that stippling motion there. And I also turn it over. I only do 1 layer on the back since these are going to be hanging probably against a wall or somewhere. You probably won't see the back, but you know, just in case you want there to look like it's cohesive. For this step, I just sprayed some water onto my brush that I had, and I'm just gently tapping it against my finger to have the paint do a splatter around. I thought this was just kind of fun, maybe look like little snowflakes were on the mitten. And then I went around it with a fingernail file, just use a finger sander, whatever, because I just want to add a little bit of aging to this. That's my style. If you don't like the distressing, of course, you guys know, do what works best for you. But I really do think that sometimes sanding around the edges and adding these little touches is what takes and elevates these pieces to a little bit of a different level. So even if you don't do this step with the antiquing wax around to make it look aged, I still would even maybe sand around the edge just to give it like a little bit more of a textured look, kind of add a little bit more visual interest. But again, it's totally up to you. I take the antiquing wax here and I'm just kind of gently rubbing it over the mitten to kind of help it have a little bit more of an antiqued look as well. Now to embellish these, I took some twine here and I wrapped it around my finger 2 times so it was like a double bow. And then I just take another piece of twine. In this case, I'm using a smaller piece of twine and I'm just tying it in the middle. I like to use the smaller twine when I tie it off just because it's easier to tie and kind of work in that little small of an area. And so I just tie that off and then snip all of that off so you can't see any of the small ends, and I trim the ends of my larger bow. And then I'm just going to decide where I want to place everything here. Now I have these little wire cutters here, what these are. I got these at Home Depot, or Lowe's, I think actually, one of the two, but you can find them either one. This is the Cobalt brand, and they work so well when you're working with florals, and I get so many questions about these, but I also use this pair here. These are jewelry like snippers that I got, and I think you can find them just in the jewelry section at your craft store. They're nice when you need to butt up against something to trim it flush, so that's when I like to use those. And so sometimes you'll see me use them back and forth, and you guys always ask questions about them, so I thought I'd maybe try and explain a little bit about the difference between the two there. Now that I've decided where I want those, I just use some hot glue to place it down, and we're gonna Festive these up a little bit, and I'm just gonna add a little Mod Podge to where the snow is, just lightly, just kind of hitting those high raised areas, maybe down into a little bit of those little valleys there of where I stippled all of that texture on. And I'm just gonna lightly sprinkle a little bit of glitter. There's a little glitter on the florals that I used, so I thought that it would just really be kind of fun to have that sparkle. I know I've said this before in some of my Christmas DIYs, but if there's ever a time for glitter, I feel like Christmas is it, and I don't love it over the top, but every once in a while it does just kind of add that extra little touch to a piece that really makes it literally shine. So I think that I didn't overdo it, just enough that you have to see it, and it just looks really cute. Now I have this fencing wire. We use this on our farm. I've told you guys several times how I stole this out of my husband's truck because I loved how aged it looked because it had been sitting out forever and everything. So I'm just using some of this. To be honest, I wish I had like a thinner gauge wire. I don't even know what gauge wire this is. It's just what we use when we do fences on our farm. And it works really well, but I felt like in this particular project, I wish I could manipulate it a little bit better and easier, that it was a little hard for me to kind of get strung between these two. But I just stick it through the little hole that's cut out on the mittens, and then I just use some pliers to wrap it around to kind of give it that end so it's not going to come back out of the stocking. It's not a stocking, it's a mitten. I don't know why I called it a stocking. Anyhow, and I just kind of twist that around and then bend it so the mittens will hang the correct way. But if you even just twine, I think would work really well for this. But if you have some wire, a thinner wire, I think is going to work better. I ended up having to corkscrew it just around a pencil like this so the mittens would hang kind of how I wanted them to. Once I did this, it really did kind of solve the problem that I was having. And then I just kind of gave it a curve in the middle so I can hang this from like a peg, or on my china hutch has like little door handles. I thought it would be really cute to kind of hang from those, just kind of hanging off the corner of a shelf maybe. I just think these turned out so dang cute. What do you guys think of these? Are you a fan? I love the texture that ended up on the little cuff of these mittens and the little bit of sparkle you can see. And I think these are kind of like one of those timeless Christmas items that is never going to go out of style, and you can really make them custom to your decor. I want to make a really pretty display with some antique spools, which I don't have any of, so I'm going to create my own using some coasters, some of these Dollar Tree rounds, and then these are just a couple of ends from some bottle brush trees. These are inspired by a DIY my friend Patty from Patty J. Good did last year for Christmas, so I thought I would try my own. Now on these wood rounds from Dollar Tree, they have this hole drilled into them, so I'm just filling that in with some hot glue. You could use some spackling, or you could just leave it if it didn't bother you. Now on the center of my smaller spool, I am just using the end of a foam brush, like the little wooden handle. And for the other two sizes, this is a cardboard tube from the inside of some vinyl that I had with my cutting machine. I just used my hand saw and I cut it down to 2 different lengths. And I'm just using my fingernail file to clean up any of that raw cardboard edge, so that way I have a nice clean edge to work with. And then they will be staggering heights. It's kind of hard to tell right here, but you'll see in the end display. These coasters came from Hobby Lobby. They are currently in stock in the fall kitchen area. They're 40% off, so if you're wanting to grab those, I just removed all of the little non-slip stickies on the bottom of them, so that way you have a nice clean surface to work with. When I glued the tubes on, I did use hot glue on all of these, but I will say that I think if I had to do this over again, I would use a little more of a permanent glue, like a Gorilla Glue, maybe some E6000 or a combination. I feel like these will hold fine for one season with the hot glue, but to store them year after year, I feel like maybe a more permanent glue would be a better option for you. So just take note of that. I wanted to have a variation in the stains on all of them, the different colors, the different wood tones, because I feel like when you see displays like at vintage market days or the antique fairs, you see displays of these old spools, there is a lot of variation in the different colors, different types, and so I thought in different textures even. So I thought having like the beaded edge on the one and the different colors was a really fun, like eye-catching element to them. So now I'm just going to tear some different fabrics. I kind of went with Christmas tones in the fabrics, reds, greens, so that way you could really make these for any season if you wanted to keep them out year round. It would be kind of fun to come up with some different colors of fabric. But I just ripped them into strips so you had a really raw edge on these, and that way when you wind them around the different spools, you kind of get that look that it's tattered and aged and kind of old. And you can see I'm just using a little bit of the hot glue to glue these on. Now this part, the hot glue is fine to use, so I was totally fine with this. I just felt like if you were going to store these and wrap them up, I felt like that hot glue might kind of come unhooked from the spool's edge. So that's why I mentioned that on that portion of the DIY, but getting this fabric on, the hot glue will work just fine. This isn't rocket science as you're doing this. It's fairly simple and easy, and you can watch and see exactly how I do this. But just every couple of times that I wrap it around, I'll put a little dab of glue to kind of help hold that down in place. And then when I get to the very end of the strip, I will glue that one down. And then I go back to the other end of the spool and kind of work my way towards the center, just making sure you're getting full coverage over that entire center piece so you don't see any of that cardboard, which is why I have several strips of fabric that I'm using. That way I can make sure I have the coverage that I want and it looks like it's just kind of leftover scraps left on these vintage spools that we're making. On my middle size of spool, I'm using a red fabric on here. It's kind of a red, almost like candy cane stripe was what it made me think of. And that's what's so fun about these is you can personalize them so much to your own decor and the kind of fabrics that you would like. So the possibilities are endless. Now I'm just using one big long strip of fabric for this size. So it's going to be wrapped a little bit differently than the first one, which is really nice because it kind of gives each of them their own little story to tell or their own little difference. And it's kind of the little touches that you put into your DIYs like this that really drive home that appearance of authenticity. It gives them that nice, just the little things always take your projects over the top. So just remember that when you're doing them. Now, when I get this all the way wound up, I just take another piece of that same fabric and I tie it off in the middle. It goes around a couple of times and then I tie it just in a knot, just as if somebody from 100 years ago had a little bit of scraps on this fabric and they just tied it off and left it. On the edge of the fabric where I cut it, I just take my fingernail and kind of fray the edge a little bit so it also has that aged, tattered look instead of having a fresh cut look on it. I follow just the exact same steps on this smaller size. Now you could use some smaller strips of fabric on this, but also some ribbon might be really cute, or some embroidery thread, or even some twine to kind of differentiate it even more. I just have a little bit of a different color. This is like a khaki green fabric that I thought tied in really well. Now on the top of these, I just take these bottle brush trees that have been wildly popular over the last few years, and I'm just going to glue them onto the top of each of these. There's 3 different sizes of trees that I put on each one, and as a grouping, this is just going to look absolutely beautiful. Now on that little teeny spool that I have there, I decide to kind of change it up a bit, and I tie a little bit of baker's, the red and white baker's thread. Baker's twine, is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called. But I just tie that on there to bring a little bit more red, Christmassy, a little bow in there, just like it had been tied up with some thread. I thought it kind of was a fun little element to add to that, so keep that in mind also. But look at how beautiful all 3 of these are together. Just even one of them is going to be beautiful in your decor, but to have a grouping like this, and maybe you already have some of these spools sitting around that you could do something like this with, but these trees are so popular to kind of stack on different things in your winter and Christmas decor, and I just thought this would be such a fun way to display these. I'm excited to have these sitting on my shelf, scattered with some different winter and Christmas decor amongst them. What do you guys think of these? Is this something that you would try? I picked up this frame from the thrift store, and I also have this darling Santa ornament from Walmart. He was just a couple of dollars that I got, and this is the frame right here. It was $1.50 that I picked up. I hate this twine bow on there. I'm not sure the original picture frame came with that. I think that might have been added afterwards, but I wasn't a fan. Now, I did a project with this same Santa face last year, and it was wildly popular. It was very Victorian, very neutral. So I thought I would do this one adding a pop of color. Now, I didn't love the pink color on the frame, so I thought I would paint it black, and then I'm going to use a Crackle medium. Now, in full disclosure, if I had to do this again, I don't think I would do this with the colors I'm using. I'm going to do a red over it, but the problem with the Crackle medium is you can't do multiple coats of the paint because you'll paint right over like the Crackle aspect that you had. So when I'm playing the Crackle medium down here, I'll just kind of walk you through this and I'll show you what I mean. So you just want to put kind of a thin layer of this Crackle medium all over your darker colored surface. And then when you go back in after this dries, it's going to make your paint do this really cool crackle texture. I did red paint, and if you know with red paint, it takes several coats to get a good coverage to have a bright red. And so I feel like if I had done a brighter green, that would have worked a little bit better. But I was really just kind of wanting to go for a red and white look. But it almost has, I don't know, you could see the black paint through even without the Crackle medium there. So I think if I was to do it again, I would just start with painting the frame red a couple of times, doing a couple coats, and then going back in with a little bit of black dry brushing to kind of distress it, or maybe not even at all. It looks great in the end, but just in full disclosure, I thought I would share that with you. So you can kind of see how when it dries, it really is just a dark red because you can see a lot of the black through it. Now I have this is just some sheet music that I printed off. I just Googled Christmas sheet music free printable. I found this Joy to the World that I printed out, and I'm just going to match it, cut it to the size of the frame. Now this glass does not come out of the frame, so I'm going to be gluing it to the front, which I actually do like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crumple this up. I love to make the paper look like it's aged and old. It brings texture into a project, and it also just kind of brings a little, I'm going to age it, so it'll have a little bit of a contrast color to it. And I love the way it turns out. Now this is just the distressing ink that you can pick up at Michael's, Hobby Lobby. I think I got mine at Joann's actually. So this stuff is wonderful. These are just kind of little sample pads that I've had. The ink is starting to dry out, but I just mist it with my little mister bottle, and it works great. So until I have to buy new ones, I'm just using these little sample sizes. When you go over them with the different colors, it will just pick up all of the little crumpled areas that you made and just really make it look aged. So this is just some Mod Podge I'm putting down on the frame here, and just kind of getting that all over. And then I'll just place this paper down and then just gently push it in. Now, because we rubbed that distressing ink over all the crumpled parts, even though this is going to lay flat on the glass, you'll still see all of those wrinkles and everything because we did that texture and that distressing ink. It's really cool. And I'm just placing my Santa down there to see how it looks. Now, I apologize, my camera stopped recording right here, which I don't know why, but you can see here I'm just taking some little ends of a pick and I glue on either side of the top of the frame there. And then I'm just taking this ribbon right here that I have that matches all of my Christmas decor. And I'm just showing you that I glued the little picks on either side. Now I just took my ribbon and I did kind of just like a circle like this, and then you'll just take it and fold it in the middle so it crumples down like a bow, and then you just glue a little piece of ribbon around it to pinch it in the middle. And you can just put a couple, like a strip behind for tails if you want to have the little tails on there, and then I just glued that piece on. I also just took some E6000 and some hot glue to put on the back of my Santa, and that's what's holding him down. You definitely want that E6000 because he is heavy. So if you pick up this Santa at Walmart, just know that he's heavy. You're gonna want that extra hold. I love the pop of color in this one. The one I made last year was very neutral, but I love that pop of red and the greenery on there. I think that really makes this piece. What a beautiful addition to your Christmas decor. I've seen a lot of these really beautiful woodland, almost Christmas trees to be used for display, like tabletop Christmas trees, and I wanted to try and create my own. And I'm just using, this is just some of the reindeer moss that I'm going to cut up into some really small pieces. I'm just using a cookie sheet here to kind of contain the mess. And then even after I cut it, I'll cut it even more, just really, really fine that you want this. Now I'm just taking one of these Christmas tree forms that you can pick up at any craft store. Dollar Tree has some smaller ones that you could use. And rather than using hot glue, I just use some of the Beacon's craft glue. And I'm just going to kind of roll this into that reindeer moss that I cut and cover the entire tree. I just work in small sections, and you can see here I will go back in and trim it so it's not so bushy around the edges, and so that way it's kind of a nice sleek form. You can see this is what it looks like once I get all of the tree covered, and it took me 3 bags of the reindeer moss to cover this. Now this is a bag of potpourri I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It has some beautiful pine cones in it, but it has the most amazing smell. And you can see here all of the different pieces. I kind of categorized it so I knew what I was working with. Now I made a kissing ball last year doing this exact same technique, and it was wildly popular. And it was so fun, and the scent that it brought into my home, the beautiful potpourri smell, was amazing. So I thought it would be fun to kind of have another piece that I could put on display to have as you walked by, get that beautiful smell. So I'm just going to put some pine cones on here, just using hot glue now that I've got the reindeer moss all the way around that styrofoam. You're going to be okay to use the hot glue and not melt your cone or your form here. So I just put one little one up at the top, so I knew that was just the perfect size. And then I take my bigger pine cones and I start at the bottom, and I'm just going to work my way up. And you're just going to sporadically glue these on. There's no real rhyme or reason. You're just kind of working with the bigger pine cones on the bottom and working up to smaller pine cones at the top of your cone, the tree form. And it's going to look something like this here. So not the prettiest yet, but you can kind of see what I'm going for. Now to get some of those little glue webs that you get, the little strings, I just use my heat tool to kind of melt those away. So now there's these little like chestnuts, I'm gonna guess that they are, maybe, I don't know, these little pieces that are in the potpourri. I'm going to sporadically glue those in as well. So depending on what kind of potpourri you use, or you find you may or may not have these pieces, so this would be totally optional, or you could use something else. And then I just have a lot of other greenery. These are just some picks from Dollar Tree, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Joann's, just a bunch of different Christmas picks that I have. You can even see to the right, one of them is a wreath that I had that I really liked the color of the greenery on. And I'm just going to glue this in all of those open areas here. So I will just stick a skewer in, make a little hole in that styrofoam. I will use some hot glue on the end of my pick to help stick it in there. It will kind of melt that styrofoam as you stick it in, but that helps it get a really good hold once that completely dries in there. These are very, very sturdy, and it's going to store really well. And as I was making this, I had my kids, like a couple of them came downstairs, and the first thing they were like, what is that delightful smell? Like they could smell the potpourri even from just walking in the room from working with this. So it's just such a fun way to bring a good Christmas scent into your home and have it be, just kind of a secret. Like nobody knows where it's really coming from that you glued potpourri to a tree. Every once in a while, go ahead and set your tree up and kind of spin it around, look at it from different angles and see if you've got any holes anywhere, and just make sure that you're keeping that traditional like triangle shape of the tree so that you're putting your bigger pieces of greenery at the bottom. And as you work your way up to the top, they're gradually getting shorter and smaller. So that way you just keep that, and you don't compromise the form of that tree. So you keep that shape. And I just kind of will spin this around and look at it. You can see down to the right, I cut some of my pieces really small to stick in there, but you can make this as full as you want, which I suggest doing because it's absolutely beautiful, the fuller that these are. And you can see there are some wispy little different kind of picks that I've put in there that do kind of stick out a little bit further, and that's totally fine. I suggest doing that. But for the most part, you're just wanting to keep your generalized shape of that tree. But oh my gosh, you guys, look at how beautiful this is. If you find these on Pottery Barn's website or even Kirkland's website, they're hundreds of dollars. They're so expensive. And here you've made a beautiful one that not only looks beautiful, but smells amazing. I think this would be such a fun piece to have to put out at the beginning of your Christmas decorating season, your holiday decorating season, and have it up all the way through winter. It's going to last all season long, and I think this is just beautiful. What do you guys think of this one? For this project, you just need a blank picture like this. Now, this originally had some writing on it. It was from Hobby Lobby, I believe. I bought it at the clearance. I had painted over it for another project, but I'd never used it, so it's perfect for this. And I have these two little different grapevine wreaths, these two different sizes. And I've seen these at a couple of like the craft shows that I've been to recently, and even some boutiques. So I thought it would be fun to make my own little snowman. And I'm just using some scrap wood for the snowman's hat. I'm just going to paint these with some black paint. Now, this little brim is just a piece of a painter's stick, and then it's just a little piece of scrap wood from like one of those Dollar Tree planks that you get that come like 5 in a package. Now, to embellish my little snowman here, I want some cute little bells. These are just some rusted bells. You can take some regular bells that you may have, spray them with some adhesive or put Mod Podge on them and put some cinnamon on them to rust them up. Soak them in some vinegar to do a rust technique that way. I actually bought a container at the craft store of just rusted bells because I use them a lot in my Christmas DIYs. So I thought it would be fun to have some just on hand. I just took 2 of them and I just tied them together so that way they could dangle from what's going to be like the belly of our snowman here. And I'm just using some hot glue on the back of this wreath. I wanted to attach the bells before I put the wreath onto my background because I just wanted to make sure that they were attached really well. And the twine that I was using, like the knot, was hidden behind it. So that way when I glue it on, you don't see that at all. Using quite a bit of hot glue, I go around my wreath here 2 or 3 times to make sure that I have a sufficient amount of glue that's going to touch the surface. You want to pay attention when you're using the grapevine because sometimes the glue will seep down into all the crevices there and you won't have a lot that touches your surface. So just make sure when you're working with something that has a lot of gaps and crevices, such as a grapevine wreath like this, that you make sure you have enough glue that adheres the surface and what you're gluing down. So just kind of eyeballing the spacing here to make sure I have enough room for his hat. I place that on so I can kind of see what I'm doing, and then I glue on the head. Now to pop up the hat, I didn't show this and I apologize for that, but I did put a little square block behind it to raise that up. And you'll be able to see it a little bit as I go on through the video how it looks, but I just thought that the dimension on the hat looked really cute. That way it wasn't so flat. It kind of comes out over his head. You can see the gap there. I really loved the look of the dimension of that, so it worked really well to have that pop out. Now, instead of a scarf on my snowman, I thought it would be fun to do kind of some florals, some pine boughs here, make it look really festive, almost like a great big bow tie, I guess, of all of these different Christmas foliages here. These are just scrap pieces that I had. So just take a look at what you have in your Christmas florals. Maybe you've got something that would already work really simple for this. And I just did the same thing on either side, so it was really symmetrical, and just kind of went for things with different textures, different tones, different colors. You could be as colorful as you wanted this, or have it be as neutral as you wanted with this. Now, a lot of the greenery that I was working with was a plasticky consistency, so I did switch from hot glue over to Beacon's glue, so I wasn't melting any of the florals that I was using. So just keep that in mind, that Beacon's glue is amazing. Now, I did just tie a little bit of gingham ribbon here into a shoestring bow, and I'm just gluing that down with some hot glue. I'm leaving the tails a little bit longer so I can kind of maybe have them ripple down over the wreath here, and I do dovetail the ends. You just fold it in half and cut up into a V motion or a V shape there, so that way you can see you have that really pretty dovetail end to your bows. Just using a dot or two of that Beacon's glue, I am just placing it on the grapevine wreath and the ribbon and pressing the ribbon down so it has a rippling effect, so it looks like it is just free falling over the snowman's belly, but that way we have control of where it is, so you can still see those bells tied in the middle. It's not going to fall down. And I do the same thing on the other side, just making sure to have a couple of little bends in the ribbon, so that way you have the natural looking ripples. Now I have this little tag. It's just from a set of Walmart tag ornaments, and it just says joy on it. I loved the colors, and I thought it was just a cute little embellishment, like he's just holding on to a cute little tag to give someone there. Now, I want to decorate his hat. So I have this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree that has print on it. And I thought it would be really cute to kind of cut this down to size, so that way it matches the size of his hat. It's not going to be too overwhelming. And I am just, since the hat is popped out, I can just fold each of those sides around and glue it onto the back, and then just leave a little bit of enough space so you can tuck some greenery down in there. So I'm just using a little bit of glue, and I just do a couple little sprigs there of some leaves and some berries to have it look like his hat's really festive. And I'm just placing a little red jingle bell right there on the front. And I had a little bit of the ribbon that I had used on his bow tie, so I just kind of folded that over like it was just kind of a little sash coming out of his hat there. And I just thought it looked really cute. You can be as fun and add as much embellishment as you want, or make it as simple as you want. Now I'm just putting a little bow on the tag there, and I decided that his hat was really, really black, and so I just decided to brighten it up a bit with a little bit of white paint on my brush, just dry brushing over that to kind of brighten it up. And that makes our little snowman complete. Isn't he just the cutest? I love how this turned out. I think that it is very farmhouse and rustic, but high-end and classy at the same time. I think it's beautiful, and it would be a great addition to anyone's Christmas decor collection. What do you guys think of him? I have this cute little Coca-Cola tin. I got it from my mother-in-law's house when she was cleaning out some of her decor items, and she had a whole pile of stuff that was headed for the thrift store, so I grabbed this. If you don't have a tin, use one of these little containers from Dollar Tree. They have all different shapes and sizes, but I've seen all over Pinterest some little junk boxes decorated for Christmas, and I thought they were so fun, and I wanted to take my hand at trying one. Now, I bought this ornament specifically to do this. I thought it looked very retro and very cute. He was just a couple of dollars with the 50% off, and I am just cutting off his little hanging tag there. It was tin, so I could snip it off, and then I just sanded it with my fingernail file, so there's no sharp edges edges or anything. But that is the only thing I purchased for this. Everything else was just scraps of what I had. So I'm just taking some scrapbook paper. This was just a piece I'd cut some out of from a project I did earlier. And I'm just cutting it to match my lid. Now, some of these that I saw did not have lids, so I could have left it off, but I thought it would be kind of cute to have this plaid peeking out and have the back of this tin. I picked this tin because it had that green color to it. It is a beachy scene on there for Coke, not a cute Christmas scene, but you know, if you live in a warmer climate, it works, and it's what I had, so I'm going with it. Now to fill my box up here, this little container, I'm just using a plastic sack there. I'm getting some hot glue. Floral foam would work fine, but I actually feel like I liked this better. I'm just taking, this is just something that for one of my Amazon packages came wrapped in this brown paper here. And so I put a bunch of hot glue down on that plastic bag, and I'm just going to tuck this all in so it's glued to that surface. And I just thought this was a great base to work with. Again, something free that I had at my home that I'm just repurposing. But I'm just making sure all of the edges are tucked around so you don't see that plastic sack anywhere. Now, I kept going back and forth between my Christmas decor items, just pulling out bits and pieces that I had left over from other projects or things, little scraps that I had. Literally everything that I used was stuff that I already had on hand that I was recycling or was left over from another project. So go through all of your Christmas items as you're getting your home decor up. If you have any little pieces you're tired of, or maybe a part of it broke off or something, keep it and try one of these. I had so much fun putting this together. Now this is just a tree that I'd used in one of my sugar molds one year, and I had changed it out for something different this year, so I am just gluing it in, and I'm just using hot glue. It dries really quick, and so that's why I liked using it, but use whatever glue you would like. But I put that tree in, and then this Santa, and they're the main focal points of this cute little junk box here. Now I had this came on a little wreath that I had from a thrift store years ago that I used the greenery off of, and I've been hanging on to that little sheet music and that little French horn. But again, use what you've got. I mean, this is so fun to be able to take even some pieces that you might have that they're so small that you don't know what to do with, and put them in a little art piece like this, and then you've got it. I just think it's such a fun idea. So I'm just sticking another little tree in. A lot of this was back and forth, trying to find pieces and dry fitting them in and deciding whether I liked it there or not before I actually committed and glued it. But I'll just kind of have you watch what I do here. I mean, look at how cute this is looking. This is one of my most favorite projects I've ever made. I thought it turned out so cute. But I'll just have you kind of watch my process here and just see everything that I'm doing with putting this together. One thing I did right here is I couldn't get that little peppermint to stand up, so I just crumpled a little bit more of that brown paper and just glued it right in to prop it up. So that's something to keep in mind to do. That's why it's so nice to use that brown paper because it blends in, but you can also use it to kind of fill in different spots. Now I had glued that French horn in, but decided I wanted to put something else there. So it took me a minute with my heat tool to melt that glue, but I mean, it was super easy once I got that heat tool out, and I just kind of moved things around so I could fit that cute little mug that I had. I bought it on clearance last year and thinking I was going to do something for Valentine's. I never did anything with it. So now it's part of this little junk box, and I think it turns out so cute. Once you have all of your leftover ornaments or trees or pieces that you're putting in your junk box, you can take a little bit of greenery. This is just from my stash of different picks that I have, leftover bits and pieces that I'm just going to glue in and kind of fill anywhere that I feel like it maybe needs a little more greenery. This is the juniper branch, I think, pick from Walmart that has these beautiful little red berries all over. I love this. It just kind of ties in that red and green Christmas feel. And then I'm just taking a little bit of moss, whether it be reindeer moss or whatever, maybe you've got your own moss that you preserved, just kind of tucking that in. If you can see that brown paper, that's great too. But I just thought that this kind of brought in a little bit more greenery into it. But look at how beautiful this turns out. I mean, how fun is this? And I guarantee you've got a lot of little Christmas things hanging around your decor, little bits and pieces, as I like to call them, that you could totally bring together and make a beautiful little Christmas junk box like this. I mean, I hate to use the word junk with it, but I know that's what they call them. But oh my gosh, I just think this is so fun and so beautiful and has that great vintage vibe. I'm so excited to use this in my decor this year. What do you guys think? Have you hopped on this trend? Have you tried this? Do you think you're going to try it? I would love to know your thoughts on this. Have you been able to find these cute little tin reindeer at Dollar Tree? I just think they're so cute, and they come in a couple different patterns, but I'm going to give this one a little bit of a makeover. There's so many different fun DIYs I've seen out there, but I'm just using some pliers to remove the deer from the little wooden stand. If it was a little difficult for me to do, if you have a hard time, you could even just tape around the base so that way you're not going to get any paint on it if you want to kind of leave it, or you could just paint it along with the deer if you want. I'm going to give this kind of that aged metal look here. I'm just painting it all black, and I will do the front and the back. This is just some black chalk paint just to start with your base. I think that the black looks really pretty. We're going to give this kind of a gold tone to it as well. And I just think the black has a really good undertone to it. But you could, of course, go through with whatever type of color you wanted to have be your underneath color. I'm just taking a little bit of black paint here after that first coat, and I'm going to mix some baking soda in with it. This is just, I'm doing this on a plate here. Do not worry about that red paint. It's dry. I'm just reusing my plate as many times as I can before I have to absolutely throw it away. Now I'm just going to mix this baking soda in. This is going to give a really nice texture to our paint. You could also use some spackling with a little bit of paint mixed in if you would like to. Some sand if you have to put, just something to give it a little bit of texture. So because we really want to lay that texture on thick, so when we do give this its final finish, that it really has the bumpy look to it. You'll see what I mean as we go on here. Now I'm just going up and down kind of like in a stippling motion, just putting this texture on. You'll notice with the baking soda that it's not really like in a spreadable consistency. So you do kind of want to, not in the traditional sense as like paint. But I mean, if you were to use a putty knife, you could probably spread it. But with your brush, you're just going up and down in that pouncing motion. You can kind of hopefully see the texture here when I zoom in, kind of see what it looks like there. So you're just going to go over all of this. Now you can give the texture to the back if you would like to. You can leave the back plain black. You could even finish the back the same as you do the front. That's completely up to you. Now I'm just taking some Rub and Buff. This is that gold color. It has such a nice, beautiful tone to it. I'm really kind of going for this nice woodland vibe with the rich tones, kind of those really like the gold and the black and the deep browns is really what I'm kind of feeling with this piece. And you can see here, I'm just going to rub that Rub and Buff on. I eventually switch over to my finger on this particular piece though. Some of the ones when I've done bells before, it's worked really well with a paper towel, but with the texture on this, it was kind of eating through the paper towel, if that makes sense. So I'm just, I switch over to my finger in just a moment and kind of rub it on. I felt like I could get the texture and the coverage I wanted. So don't be afraid to do that. It washes right off your finger. You're not going to be walking around with gold tipped fingers for weeks or anything like that. but you can see that beautiful texture coming through. And here was where I kind of start going through with my finger, because I wanted it to have a little more of the heavier gold tone than the black, and just kind of have the black peek through. Like, again, this was just a piece that was just sitting, aging for years, something that has stood the test of time. I just thought it was a really fun way to take a piece that, even though it was cute in that buffalo check, that it just shows you that you can take a piece and change it to match your decor or what you're envisioning. And of course, you wouldn't have to just singly do this on the reindeer. Maybe you've got another piece at home already that you're thinking that you could do this on, to have in your decor to kind of change something up. Now for the base, I'm just taking some antiquing wax. I wanted to make this look a lot richer. That more deep woodsy brown color, kind of like tree bark, is kind of what I'm going for here. So just some antiquing wax that I'm going to rub onto this. Now it is like a composite. It's not actual wood. So when you go onto the edges, it absorbs it like you would not believe. So instead of pouring your antiquing wax directly on it, you're just going to want to use a brush to kind of go over the edge there. To get this back in, it was very hard for me to actually kind of push this back in. I thought maybe it would just slide right back in. Maybe you'll have a little bit better luck than me, but the tin is very kind of flimsy feeling, so I didn't want to force it because I didn't want to bend that. So on the little stakes that are there, I'm taking just a dowel and just like my little rubber mallet here, and I'm just gently tapping. I don't know if it looks like I'm tapping gently, but trust me, I am, because I did not want this to bend, and just tapping that back down into those holes there, and that's just going to make it, you can kind of see I decided I need to go in just a little bit further, so just a couple little taps there just to make sure that it looks so good and it's really adhered to that. And you just want to make sure none of the legs are like bent or anything like that. So now I thought to dress him up a little bit more, I would give him a little bow tie. So I'm just taking some velvet ribbon. You can see kind of in the right hand bottom corner of my screen. I bought this in the scrapbook section at Hobby Lobby. I just really thought it was a beautiful color of green and was kind of the tone I was going for. So I'm just wrapping it around, giving him a little collar there, and then I had just tied a little bow. You can kind of see on the right hand side of my glue gun there, just a little teeny loop bow that I tied off there, and we'll just go ahead and glue that on to give him his little bow tie. I think this turned out so classy and sophisticated. I just love the way he looks with this cute little bow tie there. This is such a fun technique to take something that looked one way and then completely transform it to this neutral woodland vibe. This texture is such a trend right now, and it is beautiful, I feel, and I just really like how it turned out. And this is such a fun technique to use on any type of piece that you're thinking of. It wouldn't just have to be this reindeer, but if it's something that you're liking, you could start those creative juices flowing, thinking what in your home you could give a makeover to. What do you think of this little guy? I'm taking a few pieces of scrap wood and I cut out these Christmas tree shapes, and I wanted to have kind of a little grove of trees. Now, I thought I would try something totally new, and so we're going to see how this turns out. So I'm just using my glue gun to make a little design on these trees. I wanted them to look like they were pressed tin. Now you can buy the faux pressed tin at Dollar Tree and cut those to size and put them on these trees and probably get a very similar effect. But I know a lot of you sometimes have a hard time finding that, or you want to do something that doesn't look exactly the same on each tree or something. So I just thought I would try this different technique, and each tree I'm doing a little bit of a different design. I was just trying to think of some different designs I might have seen on ceiling tiles or different things, just kind of geometrical or swervy designs. I really was just kind of making it up as I went along. And so you could probably look at actual tiles to get some inspiration for designs. In the end, I think these all end up looking really great. Now I'm using some of this Aleene's tacky glue because I'm going to place some tin foil, as you can see, or some aluminum foil down on the front of these. So I put my glue down and I'm just using a brush to spread that all out and make sure that it's between all of like the peaks and the valleys of all of the hot glue and everything. Now, and the hot glue is completely dried at this point. I just want to make that clear so that way you know that. Now I'm just gently pressing the design down, or the tinfoil down, over the tree. And I'll show you another way that I do that rather than pressing it, because that worked, but not as great as this next way that I do it. So I'm just again showing on my next tree, I'm just spreading the glue all out with my brush. And then I use another brush with a little bit of stiffer bristles to tap that into place. So the aluminum foil, I'm just tapping it down between all of those little decorative areas, the highs and the lows of all of that glue. And I do the same thing on my third tree. Once I'm done, I just rub over it all with the brush and just make sure that that Aleene's tacky glue is holding the foil down. So just let that dry before you sand it. Now I'm just using just regular aluminum foil. This is not heavy duty, it is just the normal kind. Now I'm just showing you this little kit here. I picked this up at Hobby Lobby, but I know there's so many different brands and ways of like this patina finish. And so it comes with your primer, in this case there's a copper base, and then there is the patina spray, and that's kind of like the activator to help give it that patina finish. So first I'm just giving this a coat of black paint, and I'm doing this on the sides and the back of all of these because I wanted these to look really old, really layered. And so you can see after that black paint dries, I go in with some white paint very thickly and put that on. I wanted these to look like they had been through generations and maybe been painted over 3 or 4 times of, oh, we need to touch these up. Let's place some more paint on there. That was kind of the vibe that I was going for. Now on this middle tree here, I painted the aluminum foil side with the black paint, and then I painted over in white and did the same technique on that one because I wanted it to have a variation from these other 2 trees. So for this kit that I have, I'm painting the primer on right now. That's what this deep coppery color is right now. And you're supposed to do 2 coats of it. In this case, read the instructions on whatever kind you're using, and it will just follow them to the T and you won't have a problem. So after I let my primer coats dry, I'm now putting on my copper base coat here. And then mine says while it's still wet, I go in with my activator spray and spray that. And I did not know how liberal to be with this or anything, but you can see after you let it sit for the amount of time, I had to slow this down because I was really quick. But you can kind of see that coppery color start to come in there, and that patina, that green patina. And I know there's different types of patina colors that you can get, so pay attention to that. It'll be fun to try them all. Now I'm doing on this one, I put a little bit of antiquing wax and then a little bit more of the white paint over it. I just wanted it to look kind of rusty and like aged and old. And look at the patina finish on this large tree though. Isn't that beautiful? I love the way that looks. If that's not your style, I get it. You can do whatever technique you want on these, but I thought it was just fun. But as I was sitting these here, I went, 3 trees is great, but 5 would be even better. So I cut out 2 more shapes of Christmas trees, and I'll show you those here in just a second. But I guess first what I'm doing is I put a back on these, and I'm just using, and that's only because my wood that I cut them out of was not thick enough. Like I was afraid it was gonna tip over if somebody like walked by it or something, or a breeze hit it. So if you have really thick wood you do this with, you would not need to add anything onto the back to help give them stability, but I just glued some Jenga blocks. So here's the other 2 trees that I had mentioned, and I'm just going to cover them. I got a little smarter this time around. I cover the entire thing in black paint to start with my base layer to have a little bit of aging look there. And then I just went and freehanded some more designs on here with my glue gun and just whatever. I've actually seen some people like trace stencils, so you could even try that as an idea. And I originally thought on one of these I was going to do the patina, and on the other one just do a paint finish to kind of keep all of the trees looking cohesive. But I do end up putting foil on both of them, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. Maybe you'll be able to see it. But as I was painting, I did notice that you could see a lot of the hot glue strings. And I thought, well, the tinfoil will completely cover that. So that is why I ended up putting the foil over both of them, was because it just gave it a nice look. And here's where I started doing that and went, oh, you can see all of those strings. I don't want to see that. I want this to look high end and nice. Now I do just want to mention that you don't have to use the foil to get the patina spray. I could have just done the patina on just the wood and it should have worked. I haven't tried it on that, but the tin foil was just a technique to kind of give it more that authentic like tin pressed look. Now here I'm just putting that glue on, making sure that I get in all of the areas, and then the same thing, I just take my brush and I pat that aluminum foil down all over and just make sure that I don't press hard enough or pounce hard enough that I rip the tin foil, but I just want to make sure that I get into all of the peaks and valleys of that design. And I do the same thing on both of them, even though the one I'm going to give the patina finish to and the other one I'm not. I still do that tin foil just to cover up any of those gross like hot glue strings that you might get from doing the original design on there. Do you guys call it tin foil or aluminum foil? I'm just curious. You'll have to let me know in the comments. We've always called it tin foil, even though I know it's called aluminum foil. I'm not really sure where that came from, but that's just what we always called it growing up. So I apologize if I'm going back and forth between the two. So I'm just using a fingernail sander here, fingernail file to sand the edges, and you just gently go down and you can see I'm just going along the edge there just to perforate that foil so that way you can tear that really easily. So here I'm just doing the same process that I did before, just painting that primer on, and then I'll do the base coat. On the other one that I am not going to do the patina finish, I am just painting it with a black coat of paint so that way it matches. You can see over on the left hand side, the farthest right tree there that's all white. I want it to match that finish as close as possible. So I'm kind of having it there to use as inspiration because I want these two trees that are similar in size to kind of match, and then the other three will have different variations of the patina. And then you can see I put that patina on it and I sprayed it very liberally on this one because I thought, okay, I've seen what happens when you spray a little bit. Let's try a lot. And then I go back in and I'm just painting more white on this other tree, and I put a little antiquing wax even on it to help like dirty it up a little bit like it's been sitting around for years, and then go over the top of it again with some white paint to hit all of those. It's what makes those beautiful lines that we made with the hot glue. It's what makes those really pop and shine, and that detail is what makes these look so fun. Now you can see my middle tree there of the three. I did kind of go over it with a little bit of white paint just to kind of make it look a little bit different. Now here's the patina on the smallest tree that I did, where I put a ton of the patina spray on there, and I love how that turns out. So I don't do anything to this one at all. I just glue a little bit of the blocks together, and I do this for both of the trees, and then I just glue that onto the back to help this tree stand up. But let's have a look at all of these trees together. These are so beautiful. I think these look so high-end. They look like something, I wanted them to look like something that was maybe passed down from generation to generation. Just they were something that had been around for years and years and years. And I hope that that's what I achieved with the look here. And I hope you guys thought this process of using the foil and the hot glue was a fun alternative to using the Dollar Tree tiles or actual pressed tin. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I can see so many different surfaces that you could do this on. So I think we may be trying this again. But what do you guys think of this little grove of trees here? Are you a fan of them? I personally think they look so beautiful. I love that Dollar Tree carries these Christmas tree cutouts because they're so fun to do different projects with. So I have a few of these in my stash. So I just picked one up, and I'm just going to place this on a little piece of cardboard, and I fill the little hole with some hot glue and scrape that off. So that way it takes care of that. There's not going to be that hole. You're not going to see that anymore. I picked this napkin up. I found these at Home Goods. That's where I get a lot of my napkins because they always have such a good selection. If you have any other tips on places to look for napkins, I do like the Dollar Tree ones. I feel like the Home Good ones are a little bit higher quality, so I feel like they're a little easier to work with, and they tear a lot less than the ones from like Dollar Tree or Dollar General. but you can still find some really cute ones there. But if you have any other suggestions, let me know down in the comments on where to look for fun napkin designs. Now I'm just placing some Mod Podge down on the sign here. That's going to give us a good base to place this napkin down on. And this napkin does the pattern kind of where the napkin folds in half. The Christmas trees kind of change a different angle on there. So you can see on the top half of the tree, it looks like they're upside down on the bottom half of the tree. It's just the way the napkin is. There's no getting around it. So I just decided to embrace it and we're good to go. I'm just using my hand and my fingers to work from the middle out to spread that napkin down and make sure that it has a firm hold. And then I'm going to go around the edge with a fingernail file here and gently file back that napkin. Now I have this vellum in my scrapbook stash that looks like music, like sheet music, music notes, and I thought it would be really pretty to layer on top of this napkin. So I'm just placing down some more Mod Podge, and honestly, I wish I had done, I kind of go back and forth on this. I wish I had just done some Elmer's glue, like the glue stick on this. I was trying to stick with Mod Podge for this particular design. It does wrinkle this up quite well, and it actually works to my favor. So it kind of depends on the look you're going for. If you want this vellum to lay flat, definitely use a glue stick that like disappears. I love the purple glue, Elmer's glue stick, but it worked fine for what I end up doing with it. So I embraced all of the wrinkles that come with this, and I'm just, you can see, getting a little bit of the scrap paper that was left over to cover the parts of the tree where the paper did not reach. And then I just trim that up with my scissors. Now I'm taking some antiquing wax and I'm going to rub over this. It's going to age it a bit. And this is when I realized that the wrinkles actually are going to be a good thing because I can highlight those. And I'm just taking one of these, this is like an antiquing stamp pad here that I have, and I'm rubbing it over all of those wrinkles, and you can see it's going to highlight all of those. So it's just giving it an extra aged look, which I really did end up liking. Now I have this little snowflake hanging thing there that I got the first snowflake from. It came from Dollar Tree. All of these actually came from Dollar Tree. So I'm just taking some different sizes and shapes of different snowflakes to put on here. A bunch of snowflakes would look really cute if you wanted to do a whole grouping of them instead of what I end up doing. So just keep that in mind. But I stain one with antiquing wax and the other two I decided to paint white. And since it's Christmas time, I thought it would be really fun to add glitter, because at Christmas time I like glitter. Just a little bit, not a ton, but I thought it would be fun. So I just put some Mod Podge over the top, sprinkled that glitter on. You can see on the little bottom one here, I'm just putting it on, and then I'm just dumping this glitter on. It's just glitter I picked up at Walmart. There's all sorts of different sizes, different colors. I just love the real icy looking type of glitter. Just a little shimmer here and there. I don't love it all over my house, but it really is kind of fun to add a little sparkle to some different projects. Now this came in a package of like 10 from Hobby Lobby. It was in the wedding section. It's like a place setting for like a dinner table. And I'm using the back side of it that I stained to make this little sign. And I have these little letters that I bought from somebody who cuts letters, like sells wooden alphabets. So you can, I just found them locally, but you can check like your craft fairs, Etsy, different places that will sell wood cutouts. Ask them if they'll do an alphabet for you, or see if they sell alphabets for you. Pick up something at Dollar Tree, use stickers. There's so many different options. I just happen to have the letters that spelled out Noel, so that's what I'm using here. And I went around the sign to add a little bit of embellishment with a paint marker. Just kind of add a little something. It looked a little plain just to have the Noel on there. So I'm just deciding where I want to place all of these snowflakes and where I want to glue them and where I want the sign. This is where it would be really cute, as I mentioned earlier, to have like several different snowflakes in different, more antique wax and some more of the sparkly ones, maybe non-sparkly ones or silver or gold, and just do a whole array of snowflakes on here rather than having the cute little sign on there. It's just a matter of personal preference. Make it your own. I'm just here to inspire you, so definitely do what you can or what you like. If there's something you don't like, that's totally fine. Just change it to be something that you do like. I felt like it needed a little extra texture of something to break up all of that wood pieces that I had glued there. So I just made a little finger bow out of twine. Just a couple loops was all that took. And I'm just going to tie that down the middle, and I will just glue that right at the corner top of the Noel sign, just with a little teeny bit of hot glue, just to bring that in there. Now, if you had something else you wanted to use instead of a bow, I know I add a lot of bows to things. That would be great too. Now I thought I'd tie that twine in by on the trunk of the tree, wrapping that around several times very tightly. Kind of breaks up, makes it look like it's maybe tied in burlap or something like that. And along the back, I'm just going to do a strip of hot glue at the top and the bottom.
just to lay those pieces down, and that's going to hold that twine in place. In that package of the small snowflakes, there were these gold stars, and I thought it would be darling to add that to the top there. So it does come with a little sticky foam piece there, but you definitely want to add some glue if you want it to be permanent. So just by adding a little bit of glue, I add that to the top, and that just really adds a little extra level of sparkle and something to the top of the tree. And how cute would this be, layered with some really fun Christmas dishes, like on your shelf or your china hutch, something like that. I feel that it's flat. You could add a little something on it to hang it somewhere or put it inside like a wreath on your door, but it's flat enough that you'd be able just to kind of tuck it in somewhere, so it just has that really rustic Christmas feel that it's going to bring into your decor. This little silver tray from Dollar Tree has sat in my stash for a very long time, and I've never really known what to do with it, but I actually have the perfect idea. I feel like you'll have to let me know. So I'm just painting the front and the back completely with 2 or 3 layers of chalk paint and just a neutral color. And I have this stamp. I picked this up at Hobby Lobby in case you're wanting to pick one up similar to it. I know there's a lot of different companies that make a script stamp, so it just looks like writing. And I just rubbed my black ink pad all over it, and I'm just going to press it down. This is just the front part of the tray, so like the serving part. Now this is going to be a decoration. It's not going to be for food or anything. You'll see why here as we go along. But you can see that I just kind of place that in different directions on there. And even though there's like a gap missing somewhere, totally fine. I even go in and fill in some of the other little areas with some different directions. It all looks fine in the end. At first I was like, ooh, what did I do? But what you want to do now is, after that ink has a minute to kind of set, I'm spraying it with my mister bottle, and you can see it's making the ink run everywhere. I'm just going to wipe that off with a paper towel because it's just going to tone that ink back. That chalk paint has already grabbed onto the initial part of that ink, so it's, because it's so porous, it's holding on to that, but I'm just wiping off the excess ink. Stick with me because I know you're going to love how this ends up looking. So I take some Crackle medium, and I am just putting that onto the front part of my tray. You just want to make sure that you get a decent coverage, a good coat on there, and then you want to follow the instructions of your Crackle medium. This is folk art, but there's several different types on the market that you can use. Just make sure you're following your instructions, letting it dry completely. So now that it's dry, you're going to take your paint that you want as your top coat. I'm choosing the same color as my base coat, and I'll show you why here in just a moment. You may think that's not the point of Crackle, but you'll see how it turns out. You just don't want to go over areas that you've been, because you can disturb that process that's happening of the crackle. So if you do it early on before that paint starts to set, because you can definitely do that. And if you've seen me in any of my other videos, you know I've learned that from experience. So you can kind of see how it's starting to crackle there. You can see a little bit of that script coming through, just a very subtle touch. And I take a wet paper towel or a baby wipe with some antiquing wax, just a water-based antiquing wax. I use Waverly, but you can use any kind that you would like as long as it's water-based. And I'm just wiping this all over that crackle. So that's going to settle down into all of those crackled areas and really make those pop. I didn't want to have like a lot of different colors on this to do the typical crackle style. You can even see I'm spraying it with my mister bottle there, and I'm just going to rub the excess off of the top, because I really just want all of those cracks that we created to absorb that antiquing wax. Now, I didn't place the Crackle medium on the edge of the tray because it had this lovely detail that I figured I could distress much more easily doing this. So I'm just putting a little bit of the antiquing wax all the way around the edge of the tray, and then I will just take a paper towel or baby wipe and wipe it back so it goes down into all the grooves, and then you're wiping away the top to reveal that design. Now look at how cute this Santa ornament is. I picked that up at Walmart this year, so check and see. I was at my Walmart the other day again, and they had tons of them. And I'm just taking some IOD Christmas molds. Now you definitely don't have to use this. I just had a lot of you say that you have purchased these and you were excited to see what I did with them. But I think if you were to use some buttons or even some actual greenery to do this with, there's so many different possibilities. But I'm just placing my air dry clay into my mold here, and I'm using actually my Cricut tool here. This actually works really well to scrape off the excess clay. As you can see here, you can kind of cut into it. I can use it to get into the edges. So there's a little hack for you that I kind of accidentally finally discovered. I was kind of looking for something to scrape that off with and went, that's perfect. So the little spatula tool works great. Now, once you have this all pushed in, you're going to turn your mold over and you're just going to release it by bending it and working very slowly, just kind of grabbing onto it and helping it drop out of there. You're not pulling, you're just kind of helping it to fall out of there. I've heard some other creators doing like where they put it into the freezer for a little bit to harden it a little bit more. There's lots of different methods, but I have not had a trouble doing it this way. As you can see, it takes a minute here. It's kind of a slow process to get that all out, but once it starts falling, gravity just kind of takes over. You can see I kind of have to help it just a little bit there, just a little nick there to get it to completely have gravity take over and fall out. And so you can kind of see where I'm going to place these on here. I end up casting 2 of these to go on both corners on the top of my Santa, and then I move on to do some for the bottom. Now, what I did is I casted a shorter one. I just didn't bring my clay all the way down to the bottom of my mold because you can see that my tray is not big enough to do a full one on the bottom. And so what I end up doing is I end up tearing away part of the mold here, and I'll take some clay and I will go and cast the bottom part only so I can have that finished look like it really is the true edge to my bows there. So you can see I just put it into the bottom part and pull that out. And even when I match that up, I think, I need to pull a little bit of this away. So you just tear it off and you're just going to place it on there and see how that looks. Now we have to adhere these. So how do we do that? I've heard wood glue works, and so that's what I'm going to try. So I just placed some wood glue on the back. My clay is still wet at this point, so I can manipulate it very well, bend it to where I need to, but I'm just using my finger to spread that wood glue all over. And so that way I can get all of those tiny little pieces and everything and make sure that I put a decent amount on there that it's going to hold. And again, just spread that out with my finger, and then I just place that down. And since it is wet, I can kind of still move it, bend it, and that way get it positioned exactly how I want it. I do this to all of my pieces, and then I let this sit overnight to dry. You can see how beautiful it looks. And there was one little area that cracked, but that's okay. It just adds to that vintage look, and we're going to paint over it. So really the paint does if you have just minimal cracking like that, the paint kind of goes into there and fills that space in. But I'm just going to paint these the same as the base color of the tray. So in this case, it was just kind of a white or neutral color. And then I'm going to age it so it looks like it belongs on here. So I'm just getting a brush with some antiquing wax and getting into all of those little tiny grooves. And this mold from IOD has so much detail that it really is a lot that antiquing wax goes down in and grabs onto to reveal so much detail. And you can see I'm just wiping it away with a baby wipe here, just getting all of that excess antiquing wax off as much as I can anyway with my baby wipe. And then I will go back in with a little bit kind of like a dry brushing and hit all of the high points of these boughs. And then also you can see I'm getting into the edge there just to kind of clean it up a bit and make it look a little bit more like it was just aged and dirt had just fallen in there. So this is the finished product. I love it. I think it looks great. So it's just a matter of personal preference of what style you like. Now I'm going to place my Santa head on here like this Santa ornament. I just unscrewed the little hanging thing from the top of him, and I'm just using some E6000. I'm just going to let this sit so I don't use any hot glue, but you definitely could if you need that instant hold, but I was just going to be letting this sit again for a while to cure and dry, so I just used the E6000, and I just centered it on there, and I just think this has such a beautiful Victorian look almost. I don't know, this Santa ornament really just spoke to me, and I thought this tray and that worked really well together, and it was such a fun way to use those molds. But again, use your imagination if you don't have them. Definitely don't worry about that. Like I said, some buttons would be so beautiful there. Some actual greenery that you glued onto there would be beautiful. Even leaving it plain, that edge on that tray is beautiful as is. There's so many different possibilities. So just use what you have, and I'm sure yours is going to turn out absolutely beautiful. I was so surprised and so excited when I found this sled at my local thrift store for just $2.
I knew that I just had to have it, and there were so many possibilities, and I truly love how this turns out. So I am just taking a wipe and making sure that I wipe everything down, making sure that it's completely clean. And then on these flat surface boards here, I am just going to give them a couple coats of white paint. You can use whatever color you would like and whatever type of paint you would like. What we're going to do is a reverse stencil on the top of this with some snowflakes. Now I only did these 3 boards in the white because those were the only areas that my stencil was going to go. However, once I go to distress this, I had wished that I had done the crossbar in some white paint. I do have a solution for that, but I'm just letting you know ahead of time that I wish I had painted that. That way when I distressed it, that white would peek through. I did use a cutting machine to cut out a couple of snowflakes, but fear not, if you do not have a cutting machine, you can just cut some snowflakes out of cardstock. You can even use like those jelly window clings that you get at Dollar Tree and place down anything to cover the white area with whatever pattern you would like, and then you'll spray paint over it or paint, and that way it will create the reverse stencil. I do take this outside to my little box spray paint studio, whatever you'd like to call it, and I just give this a really good coat. I just have to go over it once with some matte black spray paint. Now, of course, you can customize this to be whatever colors you would like. I am trying to make this more wintry than Christmassy because I do want to leave this up all the way through February if possible. So I'm just making sure that that area all over where those snowflake stencils are completely gets covered. And then after that first top layer dries, I'm going to lift it up and paint the bottom of it. I want to make sure that the complete rest of the area on this sleigh is painted black. So you can do this by hand and not have to do spray paint if you would like. That is completely optional. The next step is to bring it inside, let it dry before you bring it inside. But then we're going to take the stencil off, our little snowflake, to reveal our reverse stencil. So just so you know, when you do this, that spray paint holds down whatever you've used there pretty good if it's got an adhesive on the back. So it will take you just a minute to kind of peel that off, but just be delicate and go slow so you're not going to chip or remove any of your paint. So after I remove my stencils there, I am just taking an emery board. You can use whatever sandpaper or finger sander that you have or that you like, and I am just going over this to give it a very rustic look. What happens is it takes the little bit of layer of the black paint and it makes that white paint come shine through there, and I love how that looks. And this is where I said I had wished that I had done the crossbar in the paint so that way the white paint would show through on that. But I do just take a little, and by little I mean the littlest amount of white paint on a chip brush and kind of very lightly dry brush, so it does look like it has a little bit of white there as well. And then I very lightly wipe this down with just like a baby wipe because I don't want to smear the black paint over our snowflakes, but I do want all the dust removed. Now I just take some rope from Dollar Tree and I unravel it and take one of the strands and get some painter's tape on the end of it and make sure it is tight and as small as I can get it, because I'm going to feed it through that little hole that was provided, and then turn it around and flip it through the other side so that creates our little rope tie there. So after deciding how long I want this rope to be, I just flip the sleigh over and I am just tying a knot in either side. I'm just going to trim that rope down so that way I can easily get a knot tied into the little area there. And then what I'm going to do is any excess rope, just cut that as close to the knot as I can so that way that you're not left with any that's showing. And I'm just using some hot glue to make sure that those knots are not going to fray or come untied. Now to get the kink out of this rope, since it's kind of curly from being wound up in rope, I'm just spraying it with some water, and then I hang it from like a door handle for like an hour or something, and it really straightens that rope out. So the longer you hang it, the straighter it will be. But look how adorable this turns out. I think this is going to be perfect for all winter long. You can even spruce it up for Christmas and then transition it into winter if you would like. I just absolutely love this. So for this project, I have these 2 signs from Dollar Tree, and you can use any signs. They have these for every season in different decor. Some of them are a little bit of a different size, so just keep that in mind. I'm using my heat tool and my putty knife just to get the
stickers off of the back of it because I want to use this back side as the front of my sign. So I just gently sand down the stickiness there. And I'm going to use a combination of wood glue and hot glue to get these two pieces glued together because I need the sign to be a little bit wider than what one of these is. So I'm putting them together to have a larger size sign. So I'm also putting a little bit of super glue on here along that crack between the two, and I'm going to use some craft sticks that I put some hot glue on for that quick hold there, and I'm just putting those on so that way the sign is very stable. It's very sturdy anyway, so I don't know that this would have been necessary, but I really just didn't want it coming apart. And I will cover the back up with some craft paper. Now I'm just taking some like joint compound or like spackling and just putting between the cracks here to make it look like it's one piece of wood. I don't go all the way down to the middle because I have, as you can see, my bag off to the right there. I'm going to be putting that on, so it's going to cover the middle, but it will show at the top edge and the bottom edge. So I just wanted to make sure that it looked like one side. Now you guys, I learned this hack from the Rusted Willow. She is awesome. I'll link her channel down below, so if you want to go visit her, but she keeps her antiquing wax in these little squeeze jars that you get at Dollar Tree. And I thought this is the most brilliant thing. And I just happened to be watching one of her videos and saw this and was like, this is a genius. I'm totally going to do it. I don't know if she came up with it or what, but I just saw it in one of her videos. But look, you can just go pour that right out onto your piece and you have control over how much. I'm not having to pour some out and then pour it back in or dip it. I just thought this was such a brilliant hack, and so I just thought I would pass it on and share it because I absolutely loved it, and so far it's working great for me. And you can see like how the precision is that you get on the edge. Now I'm covering this whole thing in the antiquing wax because I want to do a crackle method with it. So you can paint this any color that you want to do your sign. You're just going to match the packaging that you purchased, like the gift wrap that you purchased. Now this is Folk Arts Crackle Medium here. I just picked this up at Hobby Lobby, but I know there are several other brands. I have yet to use any other brands, just this one. It works great, but if you have and trust another product, keep using that. Let me know in the comments if you do have another one that you're like, no, try this one. It's even better, because I love trying new products. Now you put this on, and I put it on pretty liberally and let it dry. It says on here, I'm finding it here, let it dry for 1 hour. I let mine dry overnight because I did this late at night one time, and I just thought it would set together really, but you just want it dry. So then you come in with your top coat, and you do not want to go over where you have painted. You don't want to disturb the process at all. And I do that at one point here, and it'll kind of show you. Then I kind of messed it up and have to go touch it up. But you just want to get your top coat on here. And I feel like the thicker the paint, the bigger the cracks you're going to have. And so just keep that in mind as you're doing this. And you can kind of see how quickly it takes. I mean, this is just after a couple of minutes. I'm wet distressing the edges so they blend in a little bit there. So I just took a wet paper towel and went down the sides there to create a little bit of detail. Now I'm just going to cut my bag out here, this sign. I love this little Noel sign. All of the pieces that I'm using from this line of gift wrap are all kind of neutral and kind of a woodsy feel, and I really was loving that vibe together. But that's what's so fun is I got these all at Walmart. Go to your department stores or your like Walmart or Target or wherever you buy your gift wrap that's going to sell a whole set with matching tissue paper and like 3 or 4 bags in the set, and see what you can come up with, because it makes such a great, that's what's so fun about this is you have a whole set of pieces to display together rather than just like a one-off from Dollar Tree. Now I used some water on the edge of this to tear out so it had more of a natural edge rather than a cut edge, where it's not going to fit flush with the sign. It's going to be displayed on the sign so it doesn't go quite to the edges, so you can see that crackle. I thought that would be a little bit more of a rustic look and look a little bit more natural, like it was intentional. And I just used some of my school glue. If you want to do Mod Podge, that would work too, whatever technique you like to use. I don't have the most success with Mod Podge and thicker paper. That could just be a me issue though, so do what you know. Now I just put some hot glue around the edge on the back This is just some craft paper. You just buy it in the roll. You can get it at Walmart, Dollar Tree. Christmas time, you can find like the brown paper wrapping, which is a little bit thicker, and I really do like that. So pick some of that up as the holiday season is around the corner, and you'll start to see some of that wrapping in the stores. Now I'm just sanding a little bit around the edge to give a clean edge to this, so that way it looks very nice and precise on the back. And I go over with some Mod Podge to seal the paper, so that way it's going to last for years to come. But look at how beautiful this sign is. I love that it's tall, it's thick. I think that crackle looks so pretty with that Noel on there. I think this is going to look so great with the vignette. What do you guys think of this piece? Is this something that you would try? Are you liking this idea with the gift wrap and doing the decorating pieces with it? I love using pieces from Hobby Lobby's clearance section. If you guys have watched me for any length of time, you know that I love picking these items up and I just keep them in my stash because they really are such a great deal than just buying true like signed blanks, because you can get such wonderful pieces at such cheap prices, and you just change the way that they look completely. So this is inspired by something I saw in a catalog last Christmas, and it's been in my mind for a long time, and I thought this is the perfect sign to do this with. So I taped off all of the frames so I could paint it and not have any paint get on that beautiful frame that was on this. And I'm just going to peel that back after giving this probably about 4 coats to get the coverage that I wanted. Now I did use my cutting machine to cut this out because I have the world's worst handwriting. If you guys have watched me, you know that I do not freehand anything well. Stenciling, I do stencil quite a bit though. I don't usually use my cutting machine all that often, but I did want to for this particular project because I loved this font here, and I'll list the font down in my description box, so if you want to try and replicate this, you can. But stencils would be so cute, even using Dollar Tree stickers. Now you can have different red trucks from anywhere. I'm just showing you a few that were in my stash from Dollar Tree, or one was off of a garland. I have this wood cutout that I never used last year, and I thought it would be really cute because I wanted to put the red buffalo check paper on it. So I'm just tracing out the silhouette really of this truck here, and I'm just going to cut it out, and then we'll glue it on just using that famous purple school glue you guys have seen me use 100 times. I really do love this glue. It works so well. So I just carefully line up my truck as best as I can. I didn't cut it so exact. I wanted there to be a little bit of an edge because I will after I use my brayer, of course. This just helps get that really good bond with your paper and your surface. I take my sander here, just my fingernail file, and definitely a fingernail file works so good for these little pieces like this, and I will just sand off the edge of the paper to have a really good look. Now if you're worried about paper edges, I'm just taking a little bit of black paint on my baby wipe and going around the edge to cover any type of white paper that you might see when you do that. Now I have this tree that this is a Dollar Tree tree, and I thought it was so cute and bushy. I did just use some, not pliers, but some trimmers. I can't think of the word right now, but anyway, I cut the wire off. Wire cutters, that's probably what they're called. I cut the wire cutters, use the wire cutters. My goodness, I'm struggling. Anyway, I cut the base of the tree off, and I'm just using some hot glue to glue this into the truck here. And then to have it fit flat on the surface, I did just kind of bend apart the bristles on this I almost called it a brush, but it's a tree. It's like a bristle brush tree, I think is what they call them, or a bottle brush tree, something. You'll have to let me know down in the comments for sure what it's called, because I am not quite sure. My mind is still trying to get totally into this Christmas mode here. But I'm just using some little blocks there, as you saw, to glue onto the back of the truck to help pop it out, to have a little bit of a 3D look. And if I needed to cut any of those bristles off on that tree, I did that to make sure that it would fit as flat as I could on the surface. And then I'm just using my heat gun to get any of the hot glue little strings that you get. This just kind of melts those away really easily. But look at how darling this sign is. I think it is so cute. And you just read that and you just kind of can't help but sing it in your head. And I just think that little plaid truck looks darling on here. What do you guys think of this piece? Do you like it? You guys know that I am a big fan of checking out your wedding section at your craft store. I found this darling sign there that somebody would probably just overlook, thinking, oh, I don't need a sign that says sign our guest book. And maybe you've had a wedding and you have something like this sitting around, and you can totally make it be something that you can use for your decor. So I just take it outside and I sand off that design because I don't need anybody to sign my guest book. And I just sand it with my electric sander. And I'm going to go over the top of it with just a light brushing of just some chalk paint. I go really light at first. I do get a little bit heavier than this, but I just take my time going slowly so I don't overdo it. But I do want a very rustic look to this sign, but I wanted it to be a little bit brighter than what that background left. I am a big fan of finding different ways to make signs, and I'm going to show you guys how to print on tissue paper today. I am a big fan of this. So I'm just taking a piece of paper and a piece of tissue paper, and I am printing it where you'll have a shiny side of the tissue paper and kind of a dull side. And you want, at least I like to print on the dull side. So I print it or tape it with the shiny side towards the paper so the ink will not slip on that shine, that it will have something on that little matte dull side to adhere to. Now this is the first time I've tried printing on an entire page like this. I'll usually just tape a little section onto the front of my paper, but I want my sign to be the whole size of my paper. So I am just taping all of the edges down. So as you saw, I put my piece of paper down and I'm just folding all of the edges over. That way I have the entire surface area of the front of the paper for my design to print on. Now I make sure that all of my edges are completely taped down, and so I just go over them. You can see how that looks here. And then I have got this entire front surface here, and I just feed this through my printer like a normal piece of paper. So you obviously want this side right here up for your design to print on, and you can see how big the design looks and how good it looks. I purchased this design from one of my favorite graphic shops on Etsy. I'll leave the link down in the description box. They have different designs for all sorts of seasons, and they're absolutely beautiful. So now I'm just carefully removing the tissue paper. It doesn't matter if the back of this tissue paper rips at all because we're going to cut the excess off, but I obviously don't want to go just, willy-nilly and pull this off really quickly and have it end up ripping the front of the design. And also make sure that you give a fair amount of drying time to your design. I waited about an hour after I'd printed this. I was just busy doing some other DIYs, letting this dry completely. And you can kind of see how the ink goes through the tissue paper onto that normal piece of paper. So you just want to make sure to give it a little bit of drying time so that way you don't have any problems with the ink smearing or anything. So now I'm just cutting off the excess of tissue paper all around this sign so it will fit onto the top of our surface. So I just take some Mod Podge and place that down. Now you can use glossy, you can use luster, satin, whatever type of Mod Podge you have is going to be just fine. And I just lay the tissue paper down, and then I sped this up a little bit, but I do just gently rub with my finger to kind of get as many of the bubbles and wrinkles out. Now it's tissue paper and a liquid, so you are going to get a little bit of the wrinkles, and that's totally fine, especially with the rustic look. And but you can see here, if it gets too bad, I can just kind of pull it up gently, and I can kind of reassess and adjust things if I need to kind of keep rubbing that design down to get it completely adhered to the surface. Now, if your sign has these grooves like my sign has, I'm just taking a paintbrush with a little bit of water on it, and I'm going over the top of this. This goes right through the tissue paper. I get it wet first, and then I will go back over it to kind of make those indentations in the design so it looks like this is actually part of the wood. You want to make sure to go over and seal everything in with another layer of Mod Podge. This is just going to seal in the ink. It's going to give it a little bit of waterproofness. If water was to get splashed on it or anything, you wouldn't have any problems with that ink bleeding or anything like that. Then to help the top and the bottom of the sign where I have the excess blend in, I'm just dry brushing a little bit of antiquing wax onto there. It glides on very smoothly with that layer of Mod Podge there. And then I pay attention to the edges, and so it looks like that sign blends completely in. And then I go over the tissue paper with a little bit of the white paint that I had that I painted the sign with, just a dry brush, just to kind of give it a little bit of an aged look. So now I felt like this sign, you could leave it the way that it is, but I felt like it needed a little bit of embellishment. So I'm just tying just a normal shoestring bow out of this buffalo check ribbon that I have, and just kind of making my loops down to size of how big I want the bow. And then we're going to add some greenery and things to this. I'm just taking some leftover greenery and some little red berries from other picks that I have cut down, and I just tie a couple together, and I'm going to use some hot glue to glue the berries in each side there because the stems weren't long enough to tie together like the greenery was. And then I'm just going to, you can see, just glue those right in there, and then I will glue this to the top of the sign here. And I do that just using a little bit of hot glue, and then you just want to make sure to hold that in place until that completely dries. And then the same thing, just glue that bow onto the front. And then I just dovetail the ends of my bow. You can cut them at an angle, do however you like to do the ends of your bows. I did leave my tails longer so it would kind of drape down the sign. So you can see I'm just using a little bit of hot glue there. That's just going to help my tails kind of hang and droop the way that I want them to. And then I just kind of do a little bit of fluffing on the bow and everything there. And look at how absolutely darling this is. I think this is beautiful. This would be such an easy project to make and sell if you had a booth. I just think this is so cute, and I'm so excited to get to decorate with it.
It is not really a secret that a lot of us crafters love to use calendar pages for DIYs. So I'm just taking some calendars that I have in my stash or that I have used. One of them was from last year, one is from this year, and then this one I'm looking at right now is actually next year's that I found in Dollar Tree, and I found them in a few different Dollar Trees all in the last couple of weeks, so start looking for those if you haven't already. On the back of these calendar pages, they have a little teeny square of the different months, so you can kind of get a preview of what pages are in there before you buy the calendar. And a lot of calendars do this, not just Dollar Tree calendars. So you might already have some of these in the stash. Now I'm just showing you that on Dollar Tree, I really wish that bigger square was a Christmas one that they put there. Every year I look at that and think, dang it, they have some fun ones there, but I just wish they were Christmas ones. I'm just going to be using the December one, and I'm just going to do 3 of these just to kind of give you an idea, because you may not have all 3 of these calendars, but you might have one of them, or just to give you an idea to use for some different calendars that you might have. And these are just some wooden tags I picked up at my craft store, and I have just a sheet of craft paper, and I'm going to use my trusty Elmer's school glue here. I love this purple school glue. I found a bunch of it on sale at Walmart for 25 cents for these big sticks last week. So check your clearance section now that the back to school rush is over and you're starting to see those things really, really marked down. So I just put the glue on the front of all of the wood tags, and then I just put them down with that glue face down on the back part of the scrapbook paper. You can see how I am doing that here. I do my best to line it up to the straight edge of the paper. Since it is a plaid that I'm working with and there are straight lines and straight angles, you want to make sure you get it as straight as possible so it's not totally crooked on your tag. And then I'm just going to cut each of these out, cutting very close to the edge of the wooden tag, but I am going to be sanding them so it doesn't need to be exact. Now these are just rectangle tags, and traditional tag shape like a package tag would be darling as well. So use what you have. Even a circular shape would work for this. Anything that you've got. You could even use some cardboard to do this with if you would like to. If you don't have wood, cut some squares or rectangles out of cardboard and you're good to go. Now I'm just using my emery board to gently file down the scrapbook edge there to give it a nice clean look. I then use my Elmer's school glue to place down each of the squares on the tag. Now I don't want them completely centered from top to bottom. From side to side I do, and I'm measuring them compared to the other one that I made so I can get them as centered as possible in comparison to each other. I want to leave a little bit of a bigger space at the top because I'm going to go in with some greenery and I'm going to embellish it, so I want you to still be able to see that design. So you can see kind of how I place those here. I kind of use just a measure of like one square, like one row of squares and a half from the bottom up, and that left you about 2 and a little bit more of full rows at the top that you can cover up with embellishment. Now the raw edge I didn't love with how it was looking, so I just took some paint and I painted around the edge of my first one. This was a painstaking process. I did not love this right here, and I thought there's got to be an easier way, and then it occurred to me I have a black ink pad. So if you want to paint around the edge because you don't have a black ink pad, go for it. Use like a sponge tool instead. But if you have a black ink pad, I picked this up. It was $1.99.
I think and I've seen them at Dollar Tree too, but this one came from just my local craft store. And it's so easy to just place that around the edge, just kind of stamp your wood into the side of the wood, into the ink pad, rub it, whatever you need to do to fill in any gaps. And it takes seconds compared to it took me like 5 minutes to do the outer portion of the first tag. Now I'm just taking a wet wipe here and I'm going around the edge. This is going to bring some of that ink over onto the top. You can see those ones on the right hand side compared to the one I'm doing now, how it brings that black ink over the edge and gives it a really nice finish. I decided that the back needed something too, so you could do this before you did the edge of the paper. It was just something that I went, well, now I've done the edge, the back needs to look a little nice too, because sometimes you see through a Christmas tree and you can see the back of an ornament and you want it to look nice too. This fun tool is called a Cropodile, C-R-O-P, Cropodile, and it was the most game-changing tool to my crafting career. I am not even kidding. Christmas is coming. It might be a fun thing to ask Santa for. I'll have a link for it down in my description box, but it can cut holes through metal and wood, thinner pieces of it, but it still works really well. Now I'm taking my twine and I folded it in half and I'm sticking the folded part through from the front to the back, and then I pull those little pieces, little tails through there to make a nice little loop. So I'll show you again what I do here. So I just get a longer piece of twine because I'm not exactly sure how long I want my tails so far. I fold it in half and you can see where that fold is there that I have. I'm just going to feed that from the front of my design to the back, and then it creates a loop, and I'm just going to pull those tails through. This is just going to make sure that when you hang your ornament, it's not going to go to the side. If you just put one piece through and tied it off, sometimes it doesn't hang correctly. I love this method because it really does give you that nice professional touch. And then I'm just going to loop the ends to tie them off there, and I just compare them to each other to make sure that the tassels are as long on each, like that it's equal length. And you can see here, I just do the exact same thing, and then I just kind of wrap it around my finger to tie a knot, and then I'm just cutting off the little tails for however long I want them to be. Now I thought it would be really fun to add some greenery to these, give them a little something extra. They're fine the way they are, so if you want to stop right there, go ahead and do that. But I'm just using a little bit of hot glue. These are just some little scraps that I have. Whenever I use picks and things or trim things down, I just have a little Ziploc baggie of little pieces, and I kind of keep them like in season. So all of my Christmas pieces are in a bag, all of my fall pieces are in a bag. So when I'm doing a little project like this, I'll just pull them out, because inevitably you might want like a berry here or there, or a little piece of greenery or a little sparkle. So that's where all of this is coming from. I do have some of this pipberry that I got from Dollar Tree, and I just feed that through. The way that we tied that little tassel on there, the twine, you can loosen it, and I just slipped that piece of pipberry underneath it. And then I'm just taking a pencil and I'll wrap it right around this to give it a nice corkscrew shape. You could even just have just a little piece. You don't have to corkscrew it, but I just thought that adds just a little bit more texture and whimsy and a little bit more visual interest to it. I then just make a finger bow, and I'll show you how I do that in just a moment, but this is just some red and green jute twine. You can see that package there. I picked this up at Walmart, and I love that you get the red and the green because it's something that you don't see all the time, and it's a very thin twine, perfect for little projects like this. And I just make that bow and I glue it on. So I'll show you here how, in just a second, how I actually made the finger bow in case you've never made one of those. But I'm loving how these turn out. I just think they're so cute. They would be a perfect project if you had a craft fair that you were trying to make some things for, if you had a lot of those little calendar squares, or you could even just go onto like the Graphics Fairy website. If you've never been to her website, it's amazing. She has a ton of free graphics to print out. Print out something if you don't have a lot of calendar pages. Use something that you have. Even some scrapbook papers might have some little pieces to cut out that you can use. So use your imagination, be resourceful, and you can make these for literally next to nothing. You just have to have, like I said, you can even make them out of cardboard. So just use your imagination. So you can see I'm just wrapping that twine around my finger about 4 times, and then I just pinch it in the middle. and it makes the most darling little loops on either side to make a cute little bow. And then I just want to tie it off in the middle. So I'm just grabbing another little piece of the red. You don't have to do the red and the green. Don't add too many strings because it's going to get too muddled up there for you. At least for me it does. I always seem to get things tangled up. So I just cut a piece of the red and I'm wrapping that around 2 or 3 times just to kind of tie that off. And then you just tie it into a knot on the back, and that's going to secure your loop right in the middle, making it look like you have the most darling tied bow there. You guys, I know I say the word darling a lot, but it's just one of those words in my vocabulary I say a lot. So just know that that's just who I am. But anyway, this bow ends up really beautiful and it's really cute. And you just kind of, depending on how many loops you did, you just fan it out. And I love that the red and the green together there really tie all of those colors in. They match really well with that black and white plaid paper. Now you can see how I did these two. I do the same thing, the exact same thing on that third one as well. I love that I did these in a collection. I feel like over your tree, if you have a few ornaments that match, I really feel that brings your look together rather than just having a one-off here and there, which is okay with some ornaments, but it really is fun to have a collection. I think these 3 look beautiful. Definitely getting those farmhouse feels and vibes from these, and you can see they really do look high-end. I think that they would be a beautiful addition to anyone's tree. You're going to have to let me know what you think of these. Do you like the idea of using the back of the calendar pages, or would you be someone who wants to go find your own graphics and make them a little more custom? Let me know down in the comments. I love that gingerbread is kind of all the rage right now. It's so fun and it's been popular for the last few years, and it doesn't show any sign of like losing popularity or anything. So I have this little paint palette. It came from Dollar Tree, and I have to admit I was scrolling through Pinterest and I saw something similar to this. It was done with like laser cut pieces, and I thought this would be perfect to try this on. So I'm just sanding it down with my fingernail file here because I'm going to put paint on it. I want to do the best I can to get my paint to stick. If I had this to do over again, I might have spray painted the base coat on with just some of like the metallic spray paint. The hammered finish, I think, would have done a really good job giving a good texture to it. This worked fine. It just was a little time consuming because you have to thoroughly let that dry between each layer because you don't want it to flake off on the plastic. And so I just give it a couple good coats, and now I'm going to make this look as rusty as I can because I wanted this to look like give it really good aged look to it. So I start with a little bit of Merlot color. So it's like a dark maroon, and I kind of sparingly go over. You can kind of see I'll dab my brush into it and then dab it off onto the paper towel, and then I kind of use that. You don't want a whole lot, but just enough to kind of get a little bit of color on there. And I just kind of go around in different areas, and this is just haphazardly. There's really no method to this. You just keep blending and doing this until everything looks good. So I'm taking some burnt umber and I put it right onto the little bit of Merlot that I was using, so it kind of blends in together now. And I will go over all of those spots kind of right next to or around or on top of where that Merlot color was to kind of help tone that redness. I guess redness would be the correct term. But I'm just kind of doing that, so it just kind of is giving this more of like an aged look. I want this to look like a little baking tin that's set out forever, like a little muffin tin that's set out for like years at the farm or something like that. So once I get all of the brown on there, and I will go back and use these colors back and forth through different layers. So I'm not technically done with each of them, but I'm moving on to the next step right now, which is to bring a little bit of orange. So it's just a pumpkin color, and you can see I dab it even into a little bit of the brown mixture that I have there, and I start going over. And this is where it really starts to kind of come to life, that you can kind of see like a little bit of rustiness. Now, I know a lot of you, every time I do a rust technique, say, oh, but you should try this or do this. There are so many different rust techniques out there. So if you know something that you like better or that works better, I mean, definitely do that. There's the method of doing like some Mod Podge or spray adhesive and then putting cinnamon all over. There's different techniques with spray paint that you can do. I mean, there's so many different, even just a little bit of like the burnt umber would be fine too. But as you can see, I'm just going all over with that orange, and then if I need to tone it down, I'll go back in with some of the brown over the top of it. And I don't even clean my brush off between the layers. Like, that's how much you're just kind of mixing and blending all of these. So what really gives it a nice touch is a little bit of yellow, and just the littlest amount, because if you look at actual rust, you can kind of see like that bright yellow, like little pieces of that in there. Not a lot, but just a little bit. It brightens up that orange and it gives it a much more authentic look. So I just keep going around until everything looks okay, but the last step that you need to do is take your silver and go back over the top of all of that, just very lightly tapping. And so it gives it kind of like that presence of that metallic, like the actual pan on top of like the rust is coming from up underneath. So hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing here. You just want it to look rusty and crusty, and I think it's great. So now I just put some Mod Podge on because I want to seal this really good because it is on that plastic. We did sand it, so it should stick all right, especially once it gets a good cure. But I definitely want to protect it with the Mod Podge. So I do front and back with this same method. This pack of ornaments or tags came from Dollar Tree, and they have these adorable little laser cut snowmen on top of them. They're all, I think there's 2 different of each one. They all have cute little designs on them. They look like they're dressed for winter. They're adorable. So I just take a little strip of fabric that I've torn off of just some red and cream striped fabric that I have that's perfect for Christmas. And I'm just gonna tie that just in like a cute little knot on here. And I don't want it to be directly in the center. I just kind of just place it where it looks good to your eye. So if you like it in the center, I mean, go with that. This is your project when you make it, so you do differently what you want. And I mean, it's gonna be beautiful. And if you do recreate anything, I always love to see them. So hop on over to Instagram and send me a picture because I love to see the things that you guys create. So I'm just cutting this off on a little bit of an angle here, and then I will fray the ends, just pull some of those threads out so it has that nice little look there of being aged. I snipped off the end of some greenery, and I'm just taking the end of that with some hot glue, and I'm just sticking it kind of into that knot, so it's just kind of peeking out, kind of like if this was, you know, wrapped up as a gift that was set outside for years and forgotten about. So it's got this cute little pine bough and then some little berries on there for some extra little texture. And then I had punched some holes in the top with my crocodile. And so whether you glue these, I don't suggest really gluing them on the paint on plastic. So you really do just use a hole punch, or if you have your crocodile, it does a little smaller punch. But I'm just tying off the twine in the holes, and I thought it would be really cute to put the knots at the front and then just cut the tails off really good. And then I glue that cute little gingerbread man on there. I'm just trying to decide where I actually want him, and I find the spot that he is the cutest to me. So you just decide, you could put a couple on there, but isn't that such a fun little ornament? I mean, whether it's for a kitchen or somebody who bakes or just a cute little ornament on your tree, I just thought this was so fun. I am such a sucker for a really good wreath, and I fell in love with this holiday magnolia wreath, but check out that price. I totally had sticker shock for $110. No way. We definitely can do better. Hobby Lobby has these beautiful magnolia wreaths. They have them year round in their floral section. Their normal price is $50. Guys, do not pay $50 for this wreath. Their floral goes on sale every other week. Buy it when it's 50% off. The quality is unmatched. Even the magnolia floral arrangements and wreaths that I saw at Magnolia Farm in Waco were not anywhere near what this wreath is. So definitely pick one up when you have the chance. The nice thing is I can dress this wreath up for Christmas, and then everything is removable, so I can take it all down and have this wreath for the rest of the year. So I bought 3 evergreen sprigs and cut them down to be 6. And then I bought 1 sprig of berries, or pick of berries, and I cut it down to have 6 little sections also. I'm just bending the little stem on the back of the evergreens to kind of mimic the shape of the wreath. And then what I do is hold it really close to that base of the wreath, and then using some floral wire, I just wind it on kind of like a twist tie, if you will. And I'll go sometimes to the front and then to the back, like bring the wire around to the back, twist it, and if it's long enough, bring it back to the front and twist it, if that even makes sense. I'll let you just kind of watch what I do as I twist all of these on, but I just kind of go around sporadically with the wreath, making it symmetrical between the evergreens and then the berries. Before I wire the berries in, I do kind of what I guess you would call a dry fit with all of them to make sure that the spacing is good, that I like the different picks in each different area that I'm placing it. There's such a bold statement on the wreath that I wanted to make sure that they did look really good where they were. I'm going to remember to remove that price tag because I want people to think I bought this at Kirkland's. Look at how good it looks. I love it. You guys, these magnolia wreaths, or the leaves on the wreath, are so easy to manipulate and kind of move around to fill out where you need to. I love them. Here is a look at the inspiration piece from Kirkland's website that was $110. Here is mine. What do you guys think of this one? I love how it turned out. Here it is on my front door, and I would say that less than $40. So from $110 to $40 is not bad. Plus, I can use this wreath year round after I take out the evergreen sprigs and the berries. This DIY was inspired by an ornament that I saw at one of the local craft stores. It was this cute little snowman, and I thought it would be perfect to use these Dollar Tree cubes on. So I just take 3 of those, and then using some wood glue and some hot glue, I just clamp them together just to kind of get that really good hold on these. And I kind of make them a little bit askew. That's how the ornament I saw was, and I thought that was really super cute to kind of give definition. I had these little pieces of scrap wood that I'm just going to cut down to make a little hat out of, but you could easily do this out of anything else that you have, or even another sign or some of the wood pieces you get from Dollar Tree. It was just a couple little pieces that I had. And then I had a little bag of these stars that I recently got. I bought a big bag of a bunch of wood pieces at a garage sale, or a yard sale, and so I'm just using the heck out of all of that stuff. So I'll just color the hat, or paint, not color. We're gonna paint the hat black, and then as you saw earlier, I did paint my snowman in whatever color of white that you have or you want to use, and then I am painting these little stars white as well. And then I'm just taking another one of these stars, and I just kind of cut one of the little points off of them to paint orange for my little carrot nose, but whatever you'd like to use to do that would work fine. I also sanded the edges to kind of give it a very distressed look, and then I'm going to go around with some antiquing wax on all of the edges, and then I'll just kind of brush that on and then lightly wipe it off with the baby wipe just to give a little bit of a stained look and just a little bit more definition. I do the same thing with the hat, just go around the edge with a little bit of antiquing wax on my brush and then just wipe it off. Just again, it just kind of makes the wood look a little bit, I mean, honestly, it looks like toasted marshmallow to me with the snowman with the white and a little bit of stain on there. But anyhow, so I will take the little stars. I'm going to use those as buttons for my little snowman, and I'm just going to kind of sand the edges down. And then just using a little bit of hot glue, I just stick one right there on his little tummy, and then I go ahead and put the other one on the next little block there for his little tummy there. So cute. It's kind of starting to come together. What do you guys think? I don't know. I was really skeptical about how this would look, but I absolutely love it. So I just decide which side I want the hat to go on, and so I will just glue this on top of his head, again just using hot glue, and then I will glue the top portion of his top hat on there. And then just kind of center it as best you can. I don't really measure a lot with it when it comes to centering things. I kind of really like that askewed look. And then his little nose, just a little bit of hot glue. And honestly, you could stop right here and just leave this guy like this. He looks absolutely darling without a face painted on, but I thought I would try and paint a face. And you guys hear me talk about all the time that I never freehand anything, and you may see why here in just a minute. You'll have to let me know how I did. But I put some little eyes on there, just dipping the end of my paintbrush into my paint, and then I do kind of make them a little bit bigger because I want him to have a bit more fuller eyes. And so I kind of I'll go back in and put a little bit more. You can use a dotting tool to do this too, but the end of your paintbrush works just fine. So there's his eyes. So far we're good, but here's the smile. So I do the first little part of my smile, and honestly, it would have been cute if I had just left it like that, but I thought, oh, I'll make it a full curved smile. And again, guys, I am not a painter. I don't freehand a lot. Well, I don't detail paint, but his smile ends up looking okay, I feel like, but it is definitely just kind of a little bit ski-wampus. But it's definitely cute and definitely homemade, and I absolutely love it. So I just put a little bit of those little dimple type defining features on the end of his smile there, and I think the face turns out pretty okay. You'll have to let me know what you think. But I take a little bit of Dollar Tree ribbon and I cut it down because I didn't have any of the exact size to fit onto his thing, and I wanted to add a little bit of evergreen into his little hat there. So I just glue each of the ends of the ribbon down here. This is pretty self-explanatory, just using some hot glue and wrapping that around, and you just cut it to size. You could even make like a little scarf for him if you wanted to, if you'd rather not decorate the top hat, or you could do both. And then I will just glue on my little evergreen there and just add some little berries to it. I think this turns out super, super cute. I just take a gold acrylic paint marker and just touch up where the styrofoam shows through. That's just a hack for you guys. If you ever have the styrofoam peeking through on your berries, just take the same color marker and touch it up. But what do you guys think of him? I think he turned out so cute. I am absolutely in love with him. And he was so easy to do.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this compilation mega video. If you have made it this far, I would love if you would consider hitting that subscribe button and becoming a member of our crafting community. If you did like any of today's projects, remember to hit that thumbs up. But again, have such a wonderful day and happy crafting. If you like the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.